Yes, and he is approximately 4 kilometers ahead on the road now of these two riders. And that is what separates the complete field really in the Tour of Flanders, because riders who are left behind at this stage know all the back roads back to the showers. At least they get the hot water when they get through to Meerbeker. The two Telecom boys are taking advantage of that strong show by the US Postal Service and now putting in their tactic, which is to try and get Stefan Westermann up to the front, which they've done. But I don't see Zabel in this group at the minute.
Not for the moment. He disappeared pretty quickly there. In second position in the second group coming across there is Georgi Hincapie. He knows how to pay attention. There's Stefano Zanini coming across right now, and Freddie Rodriguez. There is Johan Museo. Now look at this. This is
He's
power.
An amazing guy.
He's a brilliant bike rider, one of the best classic bike riders of the last 10 or 15 years. He knows exactly where he has to be, but you notice he only used enough energy to be in the right place at the right time. He is waiting till later on in this bike race. And when you think, Phil, of all of the difficulties he's been through over the last few years of his career, with that terrible crash in Paris-Roubaix and then the motorbike accident, it's amazing that this guy keeps coming back to the top level of the sport.
And he's on form. Let's not forget he's had third in the recent Grand Prix Harelbeke, or the Grand Prix E3, which is named after the local highway here. Also had a stage win in the Gilden Sport two-day race in Holland. So he's got good form and coming back from all of his ailing problems, and is looking for a 4th record victory in the Tour of Flanders. He's watching everything right now. Museo will not make a move until he gets to the hill he loves most, which is the Mur de Grammont. That's where he'll go. If he's in a group, he'll try it there and see what comes of the move, and then try and consolidate over the final climb of the day, the Bosberg. And once you're at the top of that, you are just 7 miles from the finish, and there's trouble on the climb. Riders locking up now. That's what happens if you slip a gear or get interfered with. You simply don't make the top.
I'm not sure whereabouts in the field that was, because that was a certain amount of chaos. It must have been at the rear end of the main field that incident happened there. But at the front end of the main field is where this race really is important on the Old Quaremont. In about 50 meters time, they will turn onto the huge highway which links Ronse with Kruisbergen, and that is where for a few moments these guys have got a chance to bring themselves back into the race.
And now there's the incident again, and what happened there, and the rider in trouble was Wilfried Kretskins. If you get off this road, Paul, and into the grass, sometimes the lip of the cobbles means you can't get back onto the road.
Very dangerous indeed. And as long as you've got a bit of momentum, you can actually jump back onto the cobblestones, but it's a very dangerous thing to do. Not so bad today because the road is dry, but you try a maneuver like that in the wet and you're very quickly on your backside. Now this is what the Old Quaremont is all about. It's separated the men from the boys. The cream has come to the top right now, and you can see 1 or 2 of the big names moving forward. They will sit back for just a kilometer or so to see who is there, make sure that none of the big guys are actually missing. And I would say there are around about 25 guys in that group right now, and they are the most important men. So far, Johan Museo has made the junction. Look at him there in 3rd position. Andrea Taffy has made it as well. You see the big names know how important the Old Quaremont is. Zanini's there in 2nd.
This is a very good move. It had to come on that narrow climb. Now the strong men are free to apply the will on the Tour of Flanders. The gap is very manageable at 7:34. They will know that the breakaway has split at the front, only one man out front now. They know his reputation, they know his ability, they know they'll wipe him out in the last few climbs of the day. But now they're free to operate new tactics once they assess just who has made the split. But be careful, because you know that there is a bunch behind, and not very far behind. If our helicopter swung right, we'd probably see it about 200 meters. Quite a large peloton trying to rejoin these 25 leaders. And that's what I counted too, 25 men up front. And we've seen Johan Museo with George Hincapie is certainly here. We know that Stefan Westermann is here. Hopefully Lance Armstrong is here too. He should be. He was in the right position when the split went. Oh, we can get a little glimpse now. One lone motorcyclist coming around that corner. There they are. Now that is the second chase, which might get across.
They don't have much chance to do it because we're actually dropping down here, and in about 1 kilometer's time we're going to hit the Paterberg, and immediately the road kicks back up once again. And these guys, you can be absolutely certain, will hammer up the Paterberg because they realize they have an advantage right now. They have split off around about 30 riders into the second group of what was the main peloton just a few moments ago, and they will try and keep hold of that advantage because they would like to go to the Koppenberg in a situation like this, where there is no confusion of dropped riders coming up and riding to the front, because this is fine for them right now. They know who they've got in the group. They know that the race is about to start in earnest. They know that this is the moment when the big decisions are going to happen.
There's only 3 kilometers, in fact, from the top of the climb that they've just come over, the old Quaremont, to the start of the Paterberg climb. So that's less than 2 miles. So if they can consolidate a little gap, then surely on the climb they'll begin to pull away. 7:24 now and 63 kilometers, just on 40 miles left to race. The way they're going today, that's about an hour and a half still to ride to the end of the 86 Tour of Flanders. And Erwin Thijs has had all day out there to sell himself, but very soon there's going to be a bunch of very top class bike riders coming up to him. And it's good to see that Fred Rodriguez, inspired by his absolutely brilliant second place in Milan-San Remo, is inspired by his riding down there today as well.
Caught a quick glimpse, in fact, on the old Quaremont of Michele Bartoli. Looking down the line, I can't see him just now, as we get an indication that the 4-starred Paterberg at 20% is the next climb of the day, and Freddie Rodriguez is the first man onto it.
Oh, dear old Fred, and it's 1 in 5 this climb in old money. As he now starts to hurt them, he really is riding well. He's found his legs this year, his second year as American champion. The field are marking him, but then the field is now only 24 strong behind him there. The win of the Tour of Flanders, I suspect, might come from that. There's the turn of what is, we'll call now, the main peloton. The men who got balked or missed out in the split on the climb. There's Fred, and there's Peter van Petegem to the left of our picture on his shoulder now. Michele Bartoli is in here. I think Zabel is up here. Bettini certainly is. Looking back for US Postal. Don't let us down now, boys. Can't see them at the moment, but we know they're in there.
Well, I got a glimpse of Georgie Hincapie just a few moments ago. Freddie Rodriguez today doing a great job for Johan Museo, and this is a picture, Phil, of why you have to try and stay at the front on the old Quaremont, because the next climbs are so narrow that you actually can almost only ride in single file. There is Van Petegem suffering a little bit there. Michele Bartoli just in front of him. Paolo Bettini is the next man coming forward. This is turning out to be a brilliant Ronde van Vlaanderen, but I don't think we've ever seen a bad one anyway.
No.
This is one of the best bike races in the world, and Armstrong says he reckons this bike race is even tougher than Paris-Roubaix.
In many, many ways it is. There are always huge crowds because Belgium is the hotbed of world cycling. The people here are nuts on the sport. Now look at this problem on the climbs, and the rider from Benesto who is in a bit of trouble there is Xavier Zandio, as a Team Coast rider bites the dust and doesn't look too happy with that, and that in fact is Beckham Christensen. Oh, it's chaos out there. That's why you've got to be strong and stay at the front and keep out of the aggravation.
That's why those guys in that small group of 25 riders off the front there wanted to insist, because they know what kind of chaos happens at the back. There's a US Postal rider at the back of the group there, and that in fact is Pavel Padrinos. But these guys have got to try and get themselves over this climb, because in just a few more kilometers time they're going to do exactly the same thing again on the Koppenberg. But right now we've got that 25-man strong group going over the front of this climb together.
Make no mistake, this is why the crowd came, because they get a chance to touch their heroes and give them a leg up. Jean-Patrick Nazon, the sprinter on La Française des Jeux, was walking there as well. Meanwhile, back at the front, it's over the top and on with the Tour of Flanders. The gap is 7 minutes, and very soon we'll be lining up for the Koppenberg. And that is the next climb on the menu. Erwin Thijs can't be too far away. It's 61 kilometers to go, because the Koppenberg for him is just 3 kilometers in front of him, and that's the top of the climb. So he's about 2.5 kilometers from it now.
Well, the Tour of Flanders hasn't been here, Phil, since 1987. It's going to be amazing to see this. I raced the Koppenberg a few times in my career, and I never actually was able to get up it on a bicycle in the race.
Oh, you do let me down sometimes, Paul. I thought
well, I can only tell you the truth.
You never actually walked up it. Now you're telling me you never actually rode up it. It is a horrible climb. At least the old version was. We don't know how the new version is going to react yet to the arrival of the Tour de Flanders, nor how many people we can expect to see on the climb. I know that the police were closing one of the national highways for parking of cars to allow people to walk to the climb. They certainly weren't going to risk any cars going to it. There's your man of the Tour of Flanders, 3-time winner Johan Museo, now announcing the fact he's at the front. Daniele Nardello, champion of Italy, tucked in just behind him. Another man who's a remarkable classics rider as well as an outstanding stage race rider. This looks as though we've got Andrea Taffy setting the pace now. Another great bike rider coming to the end of his career, but never short of firepower in those big legs. They always look a bit bent the way he rides the bike, but he's such a strong man.
I tell you, look at that pedaling action right now, and he's producing an awful lot of power out of those legs. Coming across there, one of the riders from Domo, and in fact not too far away right now from the Koppenberg. As we come to the 7th climb of the day, 5 stars, 22% gradient, and this man is really going to suffer. And I wonder if he's going to make it on the bike.
Well, Paul, he's going to be a star, isn't he? Because here's Erwin Thijs bringing the Tour of Flanders back to the Koppenberg with a lead of nearly 7 minutes when he was one stage 20 ahead. But he gets to see the climb first. He'll get the glory, and he'll be remembered for taking the race onto it.
I don't think he's thinking about any glory right now. You can look at the pain. He's having a hard time just keeping those legs ticking over right now, because he's been at the front of the bike race, Phil, for around about 200 kilometers. And the thing now is it really is starting to kick into those thighs of his. He's going to have to just try and get it into the lowest gear possible. And the problem with these steep climbs, these 22, 25% grades, is you can't get out of the saddle, because if he gets out of the saddle, he's going to lose all of his traction.
Yes. And it was about here where Alan Piper fell off in his long breakaway, and the commissaire ran over him, which made Alan Piper twice as famous as he was before that. But right now we are looking here at a man whose legs are aching. As Paul has said, almost 200 kilometers in the lead, and he's got to face this, and then he's still got to go over the top to the finish with the best part of 60k to go. But this is the new climb. The crowd have been fanned out onto the side. It is a nice crowd. They can't get many more at the summit there. Just look ahead of the rider. And it looks as though they made a lovely job of the road. But the cobblestones are probably too smooth for the purists now.
Absolutely brilliant. Now, they've done a magic job there putting this road back into the Tour of Flanders, and I would have to say that Erwin Thijs will put that down in his picture book, and I'm sure there's plenty of people got photographs of him being the first bike rider to come back to the Koppenberg after all of those years.
Sorry, Paul, that reminds me, it wasn't Alan Piper, it was Jesper Skibby, wasn't it, the Great Dane. He likes me when I call him the Great Dane, who was knocked off his bike well, he fell off the bike. The commissaire ran over the wheels of his bike after that. Here we are back with the Mappe boys now. Bettini, Zanini setting the pace. These are the riders now continuing a private battle. It looks like they've got a little split going here.
This is a pretty serious part of the race here.
We've got Zanini in this group.
Zanini there, and looking a bit further back down to see if Peter van Pietigem has made this split. This race really is starting to be rather interesting here. There is Taffy, Bettini. Now this is rather a good move here by Mappe, Phil. They've got 3 riders in this split off the front.
They have.
And it looks very much as if Johan Museeuw has been caught out. Michele Bartoli, the cat, just on the back there.
Also, I noted Enrico Cassani was the Domo rider who got into the break. He was working very hard. Another Italian who rides on the Belgian setup. But this must have happened off camera on the climb of the Paterberg last time, the previous climb. And obviously they're going to look forward to an approach up the Koppenberg. Serge Baguet sitting at the back, another man who could spring a big surprise today. He had a very good Amstel Gold, it was last year, on his comeback year, having retired, said that's it, and then decided he loved cycling so much he came back, and he came back in a big way.
Well, after all of that hard work by US Postal, they seem to have missed out right now. This is one of the survivors of that leading group of 4 riders. This is the Vlaanderen rider, Jan Koeks. He is around about 2.5 minutes behind the lone leader, and approximately 3 minutes in front of the front part of that split containing the big stars of Mappe. Interesting to see Mappe adopting their usual tactic there. 3 men in that front splint, and it seems as if Johan Museeuw, George Hincapie and Lance Armstrong have missed out for the moment.
Well, let's hope they can repair this damage, because this is a serious stage of the race. To lose ground to some of the riders in this breakaway. And not all of the best men are here yet, but the big worry is Museeuw.
He's there. I just spotted him.
He's right.
He's amazing.
There.
I didn't
look
see
at
him.
The gap, though. The reaction's coming. George is coming across.
I didn't see him the first time there. It looked as if he'd missed out. There is Hincapie. Nardello now chasing. Robbie Hunter, the South African rider, he's still in there as well.
And I think there are only 2 US Postal riders left now in the hunt. Hunter is trying to get across the gap, and so too Fred Rodriguez. The reaction is serious enough. Hincapie there is best of them. I'm not sure that the other rider is Armstrong, but we'll get a glimpse. He's riding at the back of this second group, which is coming up. as they've just caught the poor old Kelme rider Rodriguez. There he comes, swept back and out of it after his long day in the saddle. But they look how much time he lost to the leader, 6.5 minutes, and they've picked him up.
Well, once you get to this part of the course, it really is easy to lose half a minute to a minute on every one of these cobble climbs, and that's what's happening to what remains of that 4-man leading group in this bike race. There was an attack came off the front there, and I thought by the style it looked very much like Andrea Taffy. But you know, I think that is Johan Museo as well, who's leapt across there.
It looks like Museo who's leading to me.
It really is remarkable, this guy. I didn't see him in the first time we went through that group, and I thought he'd missed out. Then all of a sudden we went back to check, and there he was.
Yes, you can always tell Museo because he tends to do a lot of head switching and looking around. Once he's got a move on, he wants everybody to either contribute or get out of it. And that's what he's doing right now. But this is an interesting move. He's put a lot of pressure on the other riders now to come out and get him. Whoever that rider is, Mappe, is tailing off the back at the moment. We think it's little Paolo Bettini as we head on to the Koppenberg for what is the peloton kind of right now. And there's the gap as they start the Koppenberg, 6:23.
Well, it's come down dramatically from when we first came on the air, and that was 20 minutes the advantage those 4 riders had. And now we're onto the Koppenberg for the main field. The big stars are all in this group right now. It's only 600 meters, but they've made an absolutely superb job here. There's Hincapie just getting across there with Daniele Nardello, and that will now make another Mappe rider in this small group of select riders now. Mappe, 4 riders present as Paolo Bettini comes to the front.
But how this race has changed in the last 15-20 kilometers from the US Postal driving the race on. We've now only got their favourite, Hincapie, trying to fight his way back into the frame here as Paolo Bettini is the first to see the climb. He starts to give it his best shot as well. There's a little group trying to get back on. That'll give us 1 more US Postal rider in the breakaway, which makes 2. And I think that will be it for them now as they start the climb here. Bettini, like riders before him, these men have to do their best to sit in the saddle and hold that bike on the cobbles. If you get out of the saddle, the chances are you'll pick it up off the floor and fall backwards. This is a steep little climb here. Van Petergem, there he is, coming through screen now, still very much a favourite. Here comes your man George Hincapie. Daniele Nardello is through as well. Fred Rodriguez is also tagged on, having a great day out today, and it is Lance Armstrong, the only other man left now from US Postal.
Well, that's why he came to the Ronde van Vlaanderen. There's Mario Cipollini as well. Cippo is still in it.
He's
Cipollini
amazing.
Is still there. That is absolutely remarkable.
Well, they're going to worry about him if he keeps this up. If he gets over the top of this, because it's such a steep climb, he's a big man, Cipollini, and in a little bit of trouble at the back. Stefan Westermann looks as though he might be losing ground.
That's a surprise to see him here. There's the remainder of the main field in the Tour of Flanders. There's still the possibility that these riders can survive. There are a couple of riders in here for the US Postal Service that in fact looks like the young rider Tom Bonen, the Belgian rider. He will be super motivated today. 21 years of age, his first attempt here at the big Tour of Flanders. He's ridden the amateur version, but he will be just trying to keep himself in contact, thinking about how the requirements will be for George Hincapie and Lance Armstrong in the latter part of this race.
Interestingly enough, I think that was Dierksens who was heading up the climb from this chase, so he's missed on the split as well. A lot of the teammates of Cipollini, if they could get back, would help him, but at the moment they're in trouble. This is a select bunch, but losing ground to the breakaway.
Rolf Aldag in there, the Telecom rider, just going through in the pink jersey. But certainly this race has really exploded, really, Phil, in only just 10 kilometers of racing. That's why it is so important to ride near the front on the old Quaremont, because that's where the race literally explodes for the first time in the afternoon.
That's where it all happened, on the narrow climb of the old Quaremont, where we saw Telecom position themselves very well. And we're looking now to see Gianluca Bortolami, last year's winner. We just got a tail end shot of him in that second group, and he's now may have to play second fiddle to other Italian riders who have made the selection. Looking down, this is the turn of the chase group onto the Koppenberg. Because of the narrow slopes, I see we've noted our motorbikes. Somebody went down there, overshot the bend.
I think it might have been Stefan Weissermann. It looked like a pink jersey, but it was difficult to see from that altitude. The race now breaking apart and coming back together again here all of the time. That attack there looks very similar to the style of Andrea Taffy. Well, if it's not the style, it certainly is the kind of tactic that Taffy adopts. He just keeps throwing hand grenades into the main field now and just trying to get himself off the front. What he tries to do is fatigue the other riders. He attacks so many times and just hopes eventually they'll look the other way and say, well, let him go off the front for a bit.
Well, Mappe are well represented up here just now, and they could be the big danger team, but one or two favourites have lived up to their ranking. Peter van Petegem, Johan Museeuw, they are in the lead group, and George Hincapie as well. But funnily enough, in the weekend papers, all the journalists, probably recognising the name Armstrong more than Hincapie, was naming Armstrong as the favourite over Hincapie, when we knew all the time that Armstrong has always said he's in this race to ride for George Hincapie, but we'll see. Steenbergries is the climb we're on now, and this climb is coming at 52 kilometres from the finish once we're over the top of it.
Well, the man we're looking at right now, Erwin Thijs, really much more known as a kermes rider, the small races that abound around Belgium. He won 3 small kermesses last year.
Well, this is the first time the race has been over this climb. 700 metres long, and it looks as though Erwin Thijs is grabbing every second of publicity. This has been a fabulous show of defiance by him, and giving his Palmans team in the country where it matters, his home country of Belgium, plenty of exposure.
Well, that's the important thing for some of these smaller Belgian teams, to get their name on TV as much as possible. You can see by his style here that he really is not enjoying these cobble climbs at all. But the race behind has really begun for the big names in this year's Tour of Flanders. It was good to see that Armstrong had made it there to that junction, but I think he was having a bit of a hard time right now. He told me he didn't think that he had the same kind of condition as he had in the Amstel Gold Race a couple of years ago when he finished second, and last year when he also popped up with second place as well. But with Armstrong, it's always very difficult to tell. It's really a question of super motivation, and I think he will dig very deeply today into his resources to try and stay as close to George Hincapie as possible, because Hincapie is doing everything right.
He is, and he's obviously inspired, but he's giving himself a very tough ride. He's tried his best to keep this race under control, but I think they've lost the control of it just now. But as long as Hincapie can profit from the manoeuvres of the other teams, everybody's losing teammates now, of course. It's down to the leaders now to show what they can do in Flanders. But look at the route still to go, Paul, with the climbs like the Eikenberg, Eikenberg, Leberg, Berendries, and then, of course, the Muur itself and the Bosberg. It is a fearsome end to this race.
It really is. It's changed a lot over the last couple of years, and I think they've made it much more exciting by keeping all of the climbs so close together. But it also is very difficult for anybody to control the race by putting all of the climbs in such a successive nature, because you have to be alert all of the time. Any time over the next 53 kilometers the winning break could form. That's why you have to be absolutely alert for the next hour and a quarter.
Now, still the lone figure, blazing a trail across Flanders, and he's Belgian, Erwin Thijs, at 31 years of age. Little bit of respite, even if it is over cobblestones. Well, at this moment, when you're happy the roads are dry, this would have been a very dicey left-hander over the railroad. If it had been raining today, at least they put some tarmac down there. But his old legs now, as he keeps this big gear churned out. Back to the chase. It looks like we've got 5 men here, and tagged on the back, it looks like Lance Armstrong.
I think it is Armstrong. Looking at that position there, he's riding a defensive position here for George Hincapie, and he's found himself on the attack right now. But he's keeping true to his word right now, Phil. He is sitting on the back, but there's always a big possibility that if the race develops, Armstrong could end up being the leader of the team.
From the helicopter there, Paul, I could see he was actually on his radio. He sort of was saying probably to George, come on up here, mate, it's fewer riders.
Absolutely. Well, we'll get a chance to go down there in a few moments' time. The lone leader very shortly will be on the slopes of the Paterberg, which itself is a very difficult climb, almost as steep as the Paterberg and the Koppenberg, and that will be the climb where we will once again see this group starting to split up. It looks now as if there's an awful lot of tactical maneuvering going on between the big leaders. The team who need to take responsibility right now are Team Mappe, who I reckon on a quick calculation have still got 5 riders in this group, but it looks as if it's going to be Fassa Bortolo who take over control, but it's not.
19 riders, looks like Bortolami. 19 riders here in this little group at the moment as they make their way. It's Balducci, I think, who's heading the field here for Tacconi Sport. 19 riders. Then we've got Lance Armstrong in that little interesting split as we approach the Steenbeek-Dries climb. And the gap continues to come down, heading up to the 5-minute advantage now for Erwin Thijs. He should still be clear for the next couple of little hills first. There's the group containing Armstrong, and there's Armstrong sitting at the back of the group here. And it looks as, I think in fact it's Hincapie, isn't it? It is Hincapie, this, so he's got the right man across to the back. So, and content to sit there at the moment as they assess the breakaway. Now this little rider here, who we had breakfast with this morning, Gabriele Misaglia, is looking very sharp.
Hincapie's got a bit of a problem there. He keeps looking down. I think it may well be that his gears are jumping slightly, and this is a bit of an unfortunate moment for him to be there, because the car behind is a neutral server. There you see the hand has gone up. He hasn't got his team car behind him, and I'm not sure what the problem is. He's pointing down there, and it sounds as if something's rattling quite badly.
Well, let's hope
it's a rear wheel puncture, I think.
He won't get away with that. He might be able to hang on with the mechanical, but with a flat tire, he's had it on this climb. We've got Erwin Thijs here now, further on as he starts this tough climb at the Paterberg. This is the one that many of the tourist routier riders yesterday, and remember there were 15,000 of them, found this, they reckon, the hardest climb of the whole day. Well, for Erwin Thijs, he might be echoing those thoughts right now, but then he has been in the lead for 200 kilometers.
A huge crowd turning out here as well. It's a magnificent day here, Phil. I can't remember ever having seen the Tour of Flanders held on such a magnificent spring day, and that's what has made the crowds come out in their hundreds of thousands to see this bike race. And still Hincapie, he actually wants his own team car to come forward, so it may well be a problem with the gears that need to be adjusted.
Well, at least he's hanging on in there when it matters, and let's hope that he can hang on till help comes from the rear, because he's done the right thing. He's latched on to what is a very good chase group here. There is Cassani, Taffy and Sorensen are the other riders in this breakaway.
Well, good to see Rolf Sorensen, a former winner of this bike race, getting himself into this move. This is the select group behind who are forming up now, and we'll get a chance to see just who's decided to take responsibility. There is Mario Cipollini on the right-hand side in the white jersey, leader of the World Cup. Peter van Petegem is in this group, as is Johan Museeuw as well.
Well, good luck to a big tall man on these climbs like Cipollini, inspired by his white leader's jersey. First time he's held that after Milan-San Remo in his career. Been twice second in that event, and remember, he's got a career now in his 15th year. Now here's George, clearly got his problems, and he's getting a little bit agitated now, shaking his head. He needs some help, and I don't know how much longer he can hang on here.
The big problem is they're in a breakaway situation right now. They don't have more than 30 seconds over the group that's behind them, so they won't let his team car come forward.
No.
He seems to be waiting and insisting that it's his team car comes forward to look after him. But even so, with those two riders, Sorensen getting dropped up the back there as well, there's no way that the US Postal Service car can get in there to help him out, and they've got a pretty good advantage over that group right now.
Well, this is a crucial move right now, and it's more than 30 seconds. I would have thought they, probably because of the nature of the course, they can't get the car past the riders, but there is a neutral service in position. I don't know what George's problem is, that he can't go there to speak to the guy who's driving neutral service right now, but it'll no doubt sort itself out as we continue up with the lead. This is Mark Wouters, just in a little bit of bother, number 21. There's Cipollini, and as we fan out now and find Bettini there, Fred Rodriguez. And still riding at the front now, we've got US Postal. But up to the men now from the leaderboard. And these are the Telecom boys. Andreas Clear, we saw him in action earlier, now doing a great job in defence. And the other Telecom rider here is Eric himself, Eric Zabel.
Armstrong is in there as well. Freddie Rodriguez today will be working for Johan Museeuw. There's Paolo Bettini and Zanini. Robbie Hunter still doing a great ride. Peter van Petegem also riding sensibly from a tactical point of view. He's making sure he stays in this group. He hasn't made an awful lot of effort since he made that big effort on the Molenberg a long time ago right now. He's kept himself to the front, and it seems as if quite a few riders have actually come up from the rear, and this group is now starting to swell in numbers.
Well, Tom Boonen's got back for US Postal. He's had a wonderful day's racing for the team, the young Belgian rider. As we look down, and there has been a pretty much of a regrouping behind the 5 breakaways. Many of these, of course, may not know that the 5 riders have got clear because they've just tagged on from the rear. There's the official gaps. They've got a minute now, Paul, more or less, over the group containing Armstrong. We'll call one the Hincapie group and the main field the Armstrong group. That's a minute advantage. But obviously on roads like this and the way the line out is taking place, they're not going to get a service car through to look after George.
Not for a very long time. Not, in fact, I don't think until they get to the top of the Eikenberg. Once they get to the summit of the Eikenberg, they go out onto a large main road for quite some time, and that might be a chance, if that time gap does slot up to around about 1 minute, to let the team manager go by. The team manager in this day and age of communications will know just exactly what is happening to Georgie Hincapie right now, and he'll be stuck in the team car just trying to force his way forward, trying to make the referees allow him to come forward to look after Hincapie. I can only think that he must have a problem with either his gearing or with the bottom of the frame that might have some kind of a crack, but because it is making quite a bit of noise.
Well, don't say that, because on this climb it's cobbled all the way. Eikenberg, George will be in serious trouble if he's got a broken frame, and I hope he hasn't. But if he's got even a gear problem, he's going to have huge problems now controlling. He clearly does have a problem, because he's not setting the pace. He is more or less just trying to hang on to the back, and it's not because of lack of strength here, I feel. Andrea Taffy, if he senses anything wrong with Hincapie, will attack him for sure. Misalia is the rider doing the pacemaking for Lamprey, and sitting here at the back, for the moment at least, is Rolf Sorensen, who is such a good guy and felt he made a real mess of the finish last year when he was in the decisive move then. He's in trouble now.
Well, he's pretty much towards the end of his career now, Rolf Sorensen. He's won this bike race before. He's won an awful lot of very big bike races, and I would think he's probably riding out his last season as a professional. Hincapie, despite the fact that he's got a few problems there, Phil, you can see, is still staying with this group. He's going to try and survive as long as possible and hope that his team car is going to manage to come forward. The time gap to the leading rider is still outside of 4.5 minutes as we go back to the main field and see a little bit of the chaos at the back end of the group, which has swollen quite largely in numbers now.
And back up with the leaders here. Sorensen, the winner of this race in 1972, the only Danish victory ever in the Tour of Flanders in its history. There he is, and like all good top pros, as he certainly has been, he's hanging on in there well. A few deep breaths. He's been through all the pain before. He knows what's required to stay with this group. Well, Hincapie, Paul, if he has got a problem, seems to be recovering from it.
I think he's just going to try not to panic. You see that move there? That really is a good piece of bike handling. You have to leap over any of these obstacles, because if you get it wrong and you catch the wheel on the side of those things, you go down pretty smartly.
Well, we've dropped one of the leaders here. I think Cassani has gone off the back.
Cassani, there was a quick glimpse there of Rolf's dad handing up a bottle. I'm not sure how legal that is in this day and age, but Rolf's dad seems to get everywhere out on the course, and he's followed his son for many years now through races like the Tour of Flanders, Paris-Roubaix, and to the Tour de France.
Well, every time I see Rolf's dad, who was himself an Olympic cyclist, I always say, how's Rolf going? He always says he's going great, and the thing is, he always is.
Consistent bike rider, that's what you really need to have as a top professional. Here's the main field now, starting again, wants to split up somewhat as they keep the pressure on the front end of the fold. You see the crowds there running off. They're running off to the cars to try and get to another vantage point.
They hardly have waited to see the riders through before they dash off to the next corner. I'm just wondering how much they actually see.
Well, there's a bit of a competition amongst the followers to see how many times you can actually see the Tour of Flanders. Yeah. And it gets a bit crazy out there sometimes, trying to get from point to point out on the course.
Well, 8 riders getting themselves together here. You can see by the angle of the echelon that the wind is coming across them right now as we fan through. This has become a doer struggle amongst the leaders today. They haven't been given a chance at all. Now, is this Peter van Petegem making his way forth? It looks as though it might be, and that's Museo I think he's with. So this is an interesting move now.
Well, that's definitely the style of Johan Museo now. Now, these two guys, they've seen what's happening. They realize, too, that George Hincapie is a serious contender for the overall win here today. So they've decided the group was too large behind, so they've decided they'll try and come off. And now this is Nardello coming across.
Well, this is developing now, because we've got Misalia, Hincapie, Taffy, Sorensen up front, and I think possibly still hanging there somewhere Enrico Cassani. But now we've got 3 major guns firing here in Museo, Van Petegem, and just arriving the champion of Italy, Daniele Nardello, who has, you know, hurt his arm in a crash in into Boulogne last year and limped right the way through the Tour de France, refused to give up, and he actually got better. But that was a very serious arm injury. Then in the Tour Down Under this year, before the race started, he fell off again on the same elbow, and he had it bandaged up the next morning when I saw him, and I said, are you still having problems with that elbow from the Tour de France? He says, no, another crash yesterday.
Well, they're not going to get any help from him as we rejoin the lone leader, Erwin Thijssen. You can see just how difficult it's getting for him right now. He's doing a great job, though, Phil, because he's still holding on to a 4-minute advantage, but he's going to lose most of that very rapidly soon, and I would think we'll very shortly see the big leaders of the Tour of Flanders off the front, battling it out. Almost certainly the decision will come, as it nearly always does, on the Mur de Grammont, and that is still around about 30 kilometers from here.
It's a great ride. 4 minutes and 47 kilometers to go. We'd give it him on a flat race to the finish, but unfortunately for him, A, it's not flat, and B, this is the Ronde van Vlaanderen, and they don't give you anything at all. He's had a great day out, though, whatever happens to him in the end. I'm sure he'll ride home to the finish to a big cheer, as things are happening behind all of the time now. And this looks as though we've got a reshuffling of the pack here. Just sitting at the back here, the 225 is Jan Kuijks. He's been caught now from the breakaway, original breakaway, remember. Little show of defiance perhaps before he finally throws the towel in. He's been picked up by the Hincapie group. There's Gabriele Misalia, who is a very good sprinter if it comes down to that. Not someone George would like to take to the finish, I'm sure of that.
Well, George has still got a little problem with his machine there. He consistently keeps looking down as we go down the group a little bit. There is Museo and Peter van Petegem and Daniele Nardello. They have made a great tactical move here. They've waited for that breakaway to establish itself, and they've decided just how dangerous it is, and they're leaping off the front. It's good to see, and in fact reminds me to the big comeback year of Johan Museo when he was in the breakaway with Peter van Petegem. On that occasion, Van Petegem got the victory, and Johan Museo had to settle for third place, but it was incredible to see him coming back after that dramatic accident that he had at the Paris-Roubaix the previous year.
Well, this is a very interesting move. Now, I think that those three were wise to counter the move. It's unfortunate for George Hincapie, I think, but they're going to get on here, and this is going to make what for me would be a race-winning breakaway with all of these senior riders making the gap. Little man at the back here just about hanging on, Jan Kuijks from the Flandern 2000 team. He's just trying his best just to see how long he can stay on. He's inviting everybody else to come and do the work because he's got no legs left at all. But just thinking about Gabriele Misalia, Paul, the Tour of Italy, there he is, number 63, stage winner in the Tour of Italy back in 1997. I think you were probably in Langkawi when he won the Tour of Langkawi, which was a great stage race win for him, and he's also had a World Cup win in the Hughes Cup and third in the Amstel Gold, so he's a well-tried rider. He's also into his 30s now, although he still seems to be very young to me.
But he's still got a lot of enthusiasm and still wants to try and get himself into situations like this. You can see now that this move by Museo and Peter van Petegem here has been absolutely perfect. They're riding across the gap right now, and Museo, as always, very tactical in his riding position here. They're not too happy by the fact that they're not getting any help at all from Daniele Nardello. Well, the reason for that is that Andrea Tafi is in that front group, so they shouldn't even think about asking him to come to the front right now. They'll try every maneuver that they can to get him to the front, and the two Belgians have succeeded.
Yes, and well, he may as well finish it off, but or is he? No, he's not going to. Oh, and you see, this is typical Museo. Persuades Nardello to go to the front and then attacks him as soon as he can get behind him. But Nardello's a bit long in the tooth for that one, and he's got the legs. But he's going to hurt him now as he climbs onto the Eikenberg. As you can see, it's 11%, not as steep as the one we've had, but it is a kilometre long, this climb. And Nardello comes up, and they've caught at the right time, I think, with the leader still 4:21 ahead.
It'll be very difficult now here for Jan Kuijks as they come onto the Eikenberg, because he's really now riding with the heads of state of the Tour of Flanders. These are the big men who we expected to see towards the front. Interestingly enough, unfortunately for Stefano Zanini, he's been caught out there, and you see Misaglia too having a bit of problems with the early part of this Eikenberg climb. It is a fairly good cobblestone climb, this one, and you see how, in fact, the organisation have put barriers down the side there. A little bit further up, there's a steel separation to stop the riders from being able to ride on the tarmac, which is at the side of the road.
Oh, how unfair. Nardello then looking over his shoulder there. I think we'll say goodbye to poor old Jan Kuijks here, because he's the rider who is sitting now at the back of the group alone. He's doing a little bit more than sitting there right now. He's actually looking very solid. This is Cassani deciding the best place to be is at the front if you're in trouble on the climbs, and slow them all down to your pace. So he's riding extremely well, and Mappe all of a sudden now numerically have an advantage here. Well, I suppose Domo do as well, because Cassani...
The problem there, somebody stopped at the side of the road, and I think that may well have been George Hincapie's US Postal Service car, managed to get themselves forward, and I think Hincapie there has stopped at the side of the road.
Well, let's hope he can recover from whatever the problem is. It's been very consistently against him the whole time, and important enough to change on a climb. So it must be a bike change, Paul.
I think it must be. He must have been waiting and waiting for his team to come up. They came up very rapidly indeed. A lot of the team managers actually take portable televisions into the team car so they can put it in the back and have the mechanic keep an eye on it. Then that gives the mechanic a very good chance to know just exactly what problem the rider is having. Hincapie is now no longer in this group. He's disappeared from it, but I think he got himself a very quick change. In fact, it looks as if there's a US Postal rider coming back.
Well, let's hope so, because we don't wish bad luck on anybody, and it's going to take away a lot of fun for us today in what has been a superb tour. Now, this is an attack here by Cassani. No, it's not. It's Fassa Bortolo. He's trying to get him to Michele Bartoli coming up. Yes, a big effort here. He's going past Jan, unfortunately, who's now blown, Jan Kijks. A big return, so this is a desperate effort here by Bartoli, obviously sensing back in the pack. He's got to get up to the front, otherwise the front is going to leave him behind. Well, it's a serious enemy of the leaders if he gets across Bartoli. That's the end, and full of cramp too is the very brave Jan Kijks from Flanders in 2002. He'll go backwards now, but he's going to be replaced to keep the number at 9 in this group, because Bartoli is flying up the Eikenberg.
Great move. You saw exactly what he'd done here. He waited until he came to one of the cobble climbs and used that as a launch pad to get across the group, because he knows the big names are starting to force a serious move off the front of the group here. It looks as if Hincapie is reintegrated into that group as we take a little look back down the road there. I think the next person we will see will be Michele Bartoli riding across the gap. There he is in the white jersey. He's not much more than 20 seconds behind right now. I think Hincapie had a very quick change there and managed to get back before they reached the summit of the Eikenberg.
Clearly premeditated, but the irony is that had he not had a good change, he would have caught the Bartoli Express and they would have gone back as a tandem. But as it happens, George has recovered well. But if Bartoli does get across, then we are going to seriously see a big change of tactics among the leaders. There are too many favourites getting up front.
A lot of favourites, but they're having hard rides to get across the gaps right now. That's the group of there. You see, it was the US Postal Service car which had managed to get itself across to Georgie Hincapie.
Yep.
I can tell you one thing, Dirk de Mol must have been right behind the referees there, pushing and pushing and pushing to try and get himself by, because he knew George had a serious problem. And that's when a team manager really pays for his salary, when he can get through and up to the leading break like that, change the wheel, and then it doesn't matter now. George is back in the bike race, back in the leading group, and I think probably right now breathing a sigh of relief.
You can bet your life, and hats off too to Dirk de Mol, the lone expert when he won Paris-Roubaix after a long breakaway with Thomas Wegmuller many years ago. That was his big claim to fame, and now he's a team manager with US Postal. Here's the composition of the break as we have it just now. Gone now is Jan Kijks, but shortly I think he's going to be replaced by Michele Bartoli. A much better chance for the overall win. As we look down now, we're forgetting almost that up the road by 4 minutes exactly is Erwin Thijs, with just over 25 miles to run down to the finish. This is Andrea Taffy now on the Koppenberg, which leaves us 42 kilometers to go. 222 have passed under the wheels now, and 200 of them Erwin Thijs has been leading.
Taffy on the front there you can see now Georgie Hincapie. Johan Museo looking very comfortable, very strong. It's amazing, this guy. You see a lot of riders, when they try and conserve energy, use a small gear on the climbs like this if the pressure's not really on. But Museo is such a strong powerhouse, and Taffy's not very happy either right now.
I don't know what Taffy was doing there. He says, I'm not doing it, come and give me a hand here. And Cassani, the only win Cassani's ever had is a stage of the Tour of Italy. Well, he's come up and done his bit. But it's unusual to see an Italian ride on a predominantly Belgian team. The legs have gone here, and it looks as though he tried to fly across the gap and he hasn't made it.
Well, he got to within 20 seconds. It was a brilliant move, perfectly timed, and he's going to find himself right now back in the main field.
Well, that's a surprise. That's not the Michele Bartoli of old. He had the move, he had the will, He knew what to do, and he didn't make it.
Well, that is a major surprise, and in fact it looked just a few moments ago, in fact, as if Rolf Sørensen was going out at the back of this group with Gabriele Misaglia. This group now doesn't look very much more than 5 or 6 riders. Here's Museo on the left-hand side, there's Nardello, a little further back Hincapie, Taffy, Cassani is still in there, Peter van Petegem. And just look, I think Rolf Sørensen has used his experience once more just to nick onto the back of this group.
Well, there should be 8 riders here because we've lost Kykes. So as we go over the top of hill number 11 of 16, we'll see what we can count. Because certainly Van Petegem is here now. Yes, and tagged on the back. Looks like second from the end wheel is Rolf.
And also Misaglia recovered as well. Those guys were in serious difficulty there because they were going off the back, but they did. Again, when you're a bike rider, if you find, look at this. Well, that's amazing.
Well, maybe this is why Bartley thought wiser. He could sense that the race was coming back, and he's gone back in. There he is, the man in white, because he sensed another split forming here, and he's trying to grab the first train out. This is a battle of the riders today, Paul. They are fighting for everything. Tom Boonen there is bringing across another small group, the US boy. They're not giving up, are they? This is huge, this peloton now.
I thought we were looking actually at the winning break there a few moments ago. The big names were there. They were working well together. There's Ludo Dirksen in the Lamprey jersey there. Rolf Aldag coming through. Mario Cipollini is there as well. But the face of this race is about to completely change. I think it's going to reform, and then we'll see the race starting up once more. 5 big climbs left to go. The next big climb they'll be looking at is the Leiberg. But in the back of all of these riders' minds, the climb that they always think about is the Muur de Grammont, Gerardsbergen. That is where the real legs start to tingle. That's where the big attacks come. This is the lone leader we're looking at on the top of the picture there. He still holds 3 minutes and 41 seconds.
He's not thinking about the Muur, he's thinking about every hill that comes his way right now. He takes it one by one. He says, I'm beginning to crack, and crack big time. He can afford to smile low. It's nice when you've got a sense of humour at this stage of the day in the Tour of Flanders. And certainly Erwin Thijs has earned every accolade which will be bestowed upon him when he gets home tonight. In the lead now for over 200 kilometres. We're back with the chase group sitting down at 3:41 behind him. Sitting at the back here, Gabriele Misaglia, who we'll see at dinner tonight because he's staying in our hotel, and we'll ask him what was going on. And just ahead of him is Johan Museo and George Hincapie and Peter van Petegem. 3 big favourites to win the race today, but there's trouble not far behind them.
The gap is not very much at all. It's not very much more than 100 meters or so. But the thing is, when you're in a race situation like this, these guys will keep sharing the pacemaking. They will keep a constant speed, while in the group behind there may be accelerations and decelerations, but if they don't organize themselves, they will find that this group will start to consolidate and build up an advantage.
There's little Nardello, Cassani, this is Museo, his teammate. Misaglia, little sprinter he is too. Peter van Petegem, red hot form for him. Rolf Sørensen, big George Hincapie, showing us what a great bike rider he really is now. This is a most interesting group now, and Andrea Taffy, as usual, doing all of the work. Here's Cassani. As I say, he won stage 12 of the Giro d'Italia in May 2000. That's his only victory as a pro. He turned pro back in 1997.
These guys looking over their shoulders all the time. They know, and they're listening to the crowd at the side of the road who shout up all kinds of information. Most of these people now in this area of Belgium will be running into the house to see just exactly how the race is developing, then coming out again to try and put themselves at the side of the road to see the race come by. Mark Wouters now, the leader of Rabobank after that very unfortunate accident of Eric Decker. He's trying to ride across the gap. The reason he's doing this right now is because he doesn't have any teammates in the group to try and organize the chase on the front, and he's getting a little bit frustrated with the blocking tactics of teams like this big team here, Team Mappé, who have got still 3 or 4 riders in this very large group. Lance Armstrong, by the way, is in this group of chasers, and he'll just sit back and see how the race develops, because for the moment he has advantage George Hincapie.
Absolutely, that's what he told us at the start, wasn't it? And he can now have a little bit of an armchair position for the moment at least. Pressure's off him. And I think the only reason this breakaway is surviving right now is because there are so many Mapei riders back in that chase group as doing the spoiling tactics. Otherwise, I think they would have been up here 2 or 3 kilometers ago.
Well, that's always been the big strength of the Mapei squad, especially in these big one-day races. The fact that they have so many riders in the finales, and that is why Lance Armstrong decided to come to this bike race this year to help George Hincapie, and his reasons were absolutely perfect, because right now there is only George Hincapie and Lance Armstrong left in with the real chance of doing something in the Tour of Flanders. But I have to take my hat off to Tom Boonen, the 21-year-old Belgian that US Postal have signed up, because he's been dropped several times, Phil, and he's fought his way back into the group because he wants to help the team as long as possible.
This is the spirit which now is endemic within the US Postal team. It's not just riding for Lance Armstrong, which they do in the Tour de France, it's now riding for George Hincapie in the Spring Classics. And they get confidence by their success. They've had a wonderful start to the year. And this man, Tom Boonen, is clearly a classy bike rider. Now, the man who's got the responsibility of the team today, here he is, George Hincapie, looking for Ghent-Wevelgem and Paris-Roubaix.
He has changed his bike there because he doesn't have a race number on it at all. So there must have been a very smart, slick bicycle change there by the Team US Postal Service, as Rolf Sorensen seems to be asking to have a car come forward and hand up a drink, and somebody's doing the honourable thing.
I was going to say he's waving at fresh air there, but at least he got a neutral service have come up, and he wants some food as well, because just like in Paris-Roubaix, in this race too, because of the narrow roads, they use motorcycles as neutral service to help all of the riders, of course. Just on 3 minutes the break now, as we head on to this 2-kilometer stretch now of cobblestones. So Rolf will do well to hold on to both sides of the handlebars. Life's about to get bumpy again.
Well, you can see just looking back from that group of riders, they've taken all the cars out of the gap. But looking down the road just a few moments ago, it seems as if the gap is starting to stretch out once again. And it's still hovering at the 30 to 40 second mark. And we keep forgetting that there is still one lone leader off the front of this bike race, making a lonely way towards the finish line in Merbeek, Erwin Thijs. But shortly he will get a chance to see the chasing group behind. Sorensen taking on board there one of those very famous drinks, but it's the wrong time to take it on board just now as we hit this climb. That's a product called Extran that many of these riders use, and it has around about 500 calories in that small little package.
Well, he's going to need all of them right now, but as I said, he does need both hands on this stretch of the road. So teeth are a very useful addition to the human body as we now continue towards the Leberg, which comes at the end of this cobble stretch. So this is a nice softening up process before the climb. Meanwhile, on the climb now, this is Erwin Thijs. It is really hurting him now. Doesn't need me to tell you that. He's on what is now the 5th from last climb of the day. And just over the top, he'll have a mere 20+ miles to the finish. And it's going to be too far for him.
It really is tough. 16% at the steepest part of the climb right now. The next 3 climbs are in fact well pavemented climbs. They're tarmac climbs. This climb, the Leberg, followed by Berendries and then Ten Bosch. And then after that they'll be heading down into Gerardsbergen for the very difficult cobble climb of the Muur de Grammont. This guy is just surviving right now. He knows his time is coming down slowly but surely, and it's amazing that he will keep riding like this up until the very last moment when he's caught by either the front end of the main field or the whole field, which could at any time come back together.
He might reach the Berendries, but it could be on that climb where they'll catch him. Now we're looking back here at moments ago, Fred Rodriguez, and a little bit of a problem here because this is Frank Hoy coming up for Team Coast. Now we'll see what happens, because I don't know what, well, I'm not sure why they showed us that, but Frank Hoy coming up there behind Freddie Gonzalez.
The only thing I can say is
Freddie
he wasn't
Rodriguez,
happy.
sorry, he wasn't happy, no. Well, it wasn't our fault. We're watching television just like you are. These are the chasers now. Remember that there were 9. We've lost Kykes. 8 are surviving. Bartley didn't make it. They're now over the top of the climb as well. Still well organized, and I think going clear for the moment. There's got to be one desperate final reaction from those who are trapped in the second group behind to reach these leaders as soon as they can. Otherwise they'll be out of contention.
Sorensen at the back here. Just amazing, this bike rider, Phil. He's been a professional for so many years right now, and it's at the big days like this that he uses all of that intelligence that a lot of bike riders do have. He has the ability to get himself into the winning breaks. He turned professional 16 years ago, back in 1986, and he's been at the top ever since.
Even I was a young man then. It's a long time ago, but Rolf has been one of those guys that he actually speaks English so well he enjoys our commentating, can you believe? And he often records the shows so he can go and see how we've criticised him at the end of the race. So far we've managed to avoid shouting at us.
Well, he's always been at the front of the bike race, so we haven't had too much time to criticise him. Taffy now takes up the pacemaking here on this very difficult climb of the Leiberg. Van Petegem knows this climb. This is where he launched the brilliant attack just a few days ago on the first stage of the 3 days of La Panne. He got beaten on that occasion by Stefano Zanini in the sprint for the line. But certainly these are all very much his training roads that he's on right now. It's becoming a bit more tactical on the steeper climbs.
We're getting 1 or 2 passengers as well, Paul. I think Missalia is tired. Sorensen is riding a crafty race, but he will ride at the back and then try to jump away. He won't want to go to the finish with any of these riders. He's not a sprinter. Missalia may be doing it for the opposite reasons. He is a sprinter, so why doesn't he just wait till the sprint? I think decisions will probably come on the Muur. They may do a little bit of a softener on the Berendries, which is the next climb up, but we'll see. There's the clock counting down on the left of your screen now, as it's counting the riders through, and it stopped at 2:29. Well, he may not make the Berendries.
He may not make it, but it's 4 kilometers now to go from the summit of here to the Berendries, so he should survive that distance. But I think we may well see an attack come on Berendries right now, because 1 or 2 guys in this group, like Taffy and like Johan Museo, will be getting a little bit upset by the fact that, as you say, there seem to be 1 or 2 passengers appearing in this breakaway, and we might be able to just stroke 3 or 4 riders off the back, and that will then make a very strong, serious working group. The lone leader still surviving, Erwin Thijs. He's been at the front of this bike race for 230 kilometers right now, and he certainly has paid his contract back to Koolstrop Polmans this year, because he's been on TV for the last 2.5 hours.
Indeed, and we've got 3 previous winners, let's not forget, in this chase group. In Peter Van Petegem, who won in 1999, 3-time winner Johan Museo, and Rolf Sorensen, who also won. He won in 1997. So they all know the Tour of Flanders pretty well. This is a very select group of bike riders. Now we're pulling back. Let's have a little look. It says 25 seconds on the top of our picture. Might be a bit more just now, but in fact it's 25 seconds on this little group they're trying to get across. It is more to the main field. 4 riders in that chase. They split up now because there's 5, and Fred's in this chasing group of 4 here. But again, I think they're going to. This is the one Frank Hoyd joined, so that's why our director showed us the shot. Frank Hoyd coming up to them.
Well, this is why it's so important to be on a big team when you come to these one-day classes. Freddie Rodriguez here is not going to do anything at all to help this group get across, because his man Johan Museo and Cassani are in the front. The same also goes for Stefano Zanini, who's in this group as well. He won't be. In fact, it's Laszlo Bodrogi who's got into this group. It looked like Zanini, and in fact another comeback. This is another group, and here's Armstrong. Armstrong has got himself into this little counter-attack. Yeah. He is riding a very clever race for himself. If anything happens at all at the front and they do come back, you better watch out for Lance Armstrong.
Absolutely. This is the race he tended to ride from the moment he started this race. But he's got some wonderful form this year. We're seeing Lance Armstrong now develop not just a stage race rider. Pre-Cancer Days, a single-day rider. He is now just a very, very good bike rider, and so clever. And if it came to a closing down of that breakaway, well, I know where I'd be putting my money.
I know where a lot of people have put their money already, and it's on the man who wears their number 211 for US Postal Service, Lance Armstrong. But he has so far ridden true to his word. He's done everything he can to make George Hincapie come into this bike race in the ideal situation. But he now is forcing everybody else to do the chasing. You see, it is so tactical right now. It's a big battle between the Domo team and the Mappé squad of Italy.
The average has dropped down a little bit now by 1.5 kilometers an hour as we roll towards the end. Remember, we've picked up the headwind now. It's a much harder course as we come into these hills. These 9 riders just come together. How nice to see so many Americans in the thick of the action here, with Fred Rodriguez as well as Hincapie and Lance Armstrong. I would just like to say we had a British rider in the breakaway as well, but no signs of Max Chandry.
Or Brad Wiggins, the young rider who was drafted in at the last moment.
Back there today, Paul. He's going to go home with some stories tonight.
Well, it's a serious christening when you come to the Tour of Flanders as your first ever major one-day classic, and I think he will come back in years to come with a much different view of this bike race. But I think he certainly will have gained him an awful lot of experience. Armstrong very happy to sit at the back here.
Ooh, meanwhile, back at the front here, if that's the right thing to say. We're on the Leberg, I think. Yes, the Berendries. Sorry, we've had the Leberg, of course we have. Berendries. And this is the climb where I figured they might catch him, but he's still got 2 minutes. He could be taking them onto the 10 boss. Let's hope he can, but it's a 5-kilometer ride across to the third to last climb of the day. 20 miles are just about left in this Tour of Flanders. An extraordinary race, a battle of tactics behind. 3 past winners have now got themselves into that chase group of 8. And behind, Armstrong is still battling it out in a group of 9 chasers there.
It's amazing to look here at the Berendries. I don't think I've ever seen so many people turning out for this bike race. They say that cycling is suffering at the moment and the crowds aren't turning out, but I think this absolutely contradicts such a statement. This is a massive crowd at the Tour of Flanders. We look here at Erwin Thijs. His advantage now, Phil, coming inside the 2-minute margin. Yeah. And very shortly he will get pulled up one moment or another, but what a magical memory this will give to this bike rider.
Well, remember too that these people have been watching this race live on television for a couple of hours now. They know the effort of Erwin Thijs in his own country because they are politely applauding him as he climbs up. They know he's not going to win the Tour, but they know that he's given it his best shot. And I even saw the police applauding as he came up.
Well, even the police can take sides here in Belgium because this is basically the Belgian Championships. This is the most important race for them, almost more important than the World Championships because it is the Championship of Flanders. The Vlaamse, the Flemish Lion, is the man who is in this group right now in 3rd position there, Johan Museeuw. Probably, I would say, Phil, most categorically riding his last Tour of Flanders because he has promised everybody that he will retire at the end of this season.
Yes, and we'll miss him. But now we're with the chase group of select riders here. Daniel Nardello on the right, George Hincapie on the left. This is the group containing Rolf Sorensen, number 231. Taffy is there as well, as Paul said. Misalia, Enrico Cassani, Museeuw and Van Petegem. That's the combination. They are on the climb of the Berendries to take them up to 32 kilometers from the finish. Hincapie is still there and very much alive in this race despite a bike change. And he got it at the right time. It's kept him in the hunt.
Pedaling style pretty good there on George Hincapie. He's a little bit too far back. I would have wanted to be in 3rd or 4th position right now because I wouldn't be surprised to see an acceleration come from Peter Van Petegem or Johan Museeuw in 2nd and 3rd place. But Hincapie's pedaling style is very good and relaxed at the moment. He's in the situation he wanted to be. He's a little nervous though. You see several times he's looked over his shoulder there just to see if there's any possibility of the return of that group from behind. Over the summit of this climb they have 30 kilometers to go to the finish. That's around about 18 miles. But the most important thing is that they will face very shortly the Mur de Grammont, and that's when all of the legs will be giving full pain to try and get over as quickly as possible. Here's the Armstrong group. They're not very much more than 30 seconds behind, Phil.
No, and there's the lineup for you. Mark Wouters, Zeberg, Zanini is in there, no help from him. Matin, Schultz, who's the guy coming back from the original breakaway, remember. He was, Ronnie Schultz was one of the 4 riders, and only Erwin Thijs remains out front, so he's having a wonderful day as well. He's in that group. He won't stay there for over the Mur de Grammont, I wouldn't suspect. Achtervolgers means the pursuers, the chasers. And there they are with Sorensen still riding as the ticket collector, just off the back of the group here, allowing Nardello to slip in and do his follow through in the line. So Sorensen's either shamming or he is taking a little bit of a bad one at the moment.
I think he probably is taking a bit of a bad one because just a few moments earlier on a climb, just a couple of climbs ago, he and Gabriel Misaglia were tailed off. So he's got to try and use as much experience as possible right now. He will try and stay in contact if he can on the climbs. That time gap now is absolutely plummeting. It's now down to just over 1.5 minutes advantage for the lone leader.
Look at this, Paul, 28 seconds, the Armstrong group coming back.
Well, we'd said that Armstrong would come to this bike race with ambition. He's riding a very good race for him just now because he hasn't had to do very many hard efforts out on this course. He's been riding a defensive race for George Hincapie. But if it all comes back together before the Mur de Grammont, and this is a question I asked Armstrong before the start, what would the situation be if you were in a small group of 10 or 15 riders with George Hincapie? And his answer was, I'll wait for Hincapie, but I wonder if he will.
You know, these things have a habit of happening, don't they? Well, you saw the descent speed there, just under 80 kilometers an hour. This is Masali looking over his shoulder, and this and poor old Rolf here is desperate for a drink, and he'd like them to get on with it, please. He's trying to hang on. I think he's very close to hitting the wall.
He's pretty close, but he's a tough bike rider, and he realizes this is a superb opportunity, especially as you get towards the end of your career, to be in a group like this. He's in with the super favourites before the start of the race: George Hincapie, Peter van Petegem, and of course Johan Museeuw. So he will use every tactic that he can to try and stay in this group for as long as possible. But you know, when you do come to the Muur de Grammont, it's absolutely impossible to hide, and that's when the real men who are suffering right now will hit the wall.
Well, he's taking on as much as he can take on here, so that's a sure sign he knows he is close to blowing up. And let's hope he doesn't, because he's not far from the finish. 30 kilometers to go for the leader, remember, who is still 90 seconds in front. He once was nearly 20 minutes, but he's going to get caught. He might just get onto the lower slopes of the 10 Boss, which will take him to the 26 kilometers to ride. Here's George wisely stoking up for what is going to be a very explosive last 3 climbs today. I'm not sure, because this has been such a tough race, they are riding into a headwind as well, whether these riders can risk breaking away for the finish.
Not just yet. I think the only chance is that somebody would try and go clear on the Bosberg, because from the top of the Muur de Grammont to the finish, it's going to be a block headwind, because the wind is coming out of the east, and it really has been on the riders' faces for the last hour or so since they came away from the top of the Muur de Grammont. You see Museeuw always slipping to the back of the group. He goes back to have a check and see what the situation is on the other riders. He wants to see this little discussion going on here right now between Taffy and Nardello.
Yeah.
He wants to know exactly what is going on in all of these bike riders' minds all of the time. He is the master tactician in this breakaway, but I wonder if he's got the form this year to try and win it. And strangely enough, looking at the two Mappe guys, they were formerly his teammates.
That's absolutely right, yes, and I'm sure Museeuw remembers that. We're looking at the leader here in the top of the screen as it was, and he's approaching the 10 Boss climb of 1.7 kilometers to it. A minute 21.
Going through
this man is on automatic pilot now. He's totally exhausted.
Just hoping to survive. He's through the streets of Brakel now, which every bike rider knows nearly every bike race in Belgium has to go through at one stage or another. But this climb now, the 10 Boss, is really going to hurt him, because it is, again, a very good covered road up here, but it's very steep when he gets up to the top, and it'll hurt his legs an awful lot. You see, he's having a hard time just keeping the gear ticking over right now. In fact, look at that, it's come down to a minute 20, so he may well lose it all on the slopes of this climb.
Well, this breakaway goes down in the annals, Paul, doesn't it, of the scope of Jackie Giron's win in 1992. He's not going to win, and once he is caught, he is going to go through all kinds of hell riding the last few kilometers, because the impetus and the adrenaline will be out of him, and I just hope he finishes the course after he gets caught. But here we go onto the slopes of 10 Boss, and as I say, he's on automatic pilot. The crowd now are getting more enthusiastic every time he approaches a climb, because they know what he's done, they know how long he's been out front, and now all they want to do is catch a glimpse of him.
Well, the Belgians love heroes, and this man certainly has been the hero of the day, the man of the match here on the third climb to go to the finish. 10 Boss, 26 kilometers to go from the summit here, and in the streets of Brakel is that chasing group right now. And look at the time, it's coming down very dramatically. That man, I think, Phil, will, even when he's caught, he will try and hang on for as long as possible and try and ride himself down to the finish line here in Meerbeke.
I'm not sure. I think psychologically he'll be beaten when this group comes up. They're still working well together, and Cassani setting the pace here, having a chat with his countryman, but not his teammate, Gabriele Massaglia. But I think Enrico Cassani hasn't got a lot left, myself, in those legs. He looks as though he's suffering. Here comes the smooth pedaling Andy Taffy, followed by Nardello. Just wondering whether they've got the winner in this group, though, and whether Mappe should use their strength and close this down, because I'm not sure these two guys will carry this race right to the bitter finish. 10 Boss, they're right behind the leader now at just on 1 minute. The cool Mr. Poker Face himself, Johan Museeuw. He will go on the Muur de Grammont. I'd bet my socks on it, because that's the climb where he always attacks. And remember, he's won this race, a record equaling 3 times. One more, he is the man of Flanders, and it's in his twilight year.
Well, look at this, the face of Peter van Petegem as well. These guys there at home, they really love this bike race. They live for this bike race. It is the most important day of the year for Johan Museeuw and Peter van Petegem. Hincapie quite happy there to sit at the back of the group in 8th position. Museeuw, his face there, Phil, does not give anything away at all. He is so calm and collected. And Kasani, as you say, I think really is suffering right now, but he knows he's just got to suffer just a little bit longer to try and give his leader the chance of a win today for the 4th time, and that would be history.
Almost 100 wins under those wheels of Johan Museeuw in a career which started back in 1988. This one would be the sweetest, I would suggest. Well, the last win always is. It proves you can still do it, I suppose. But looking down now at the very select breakaway, which will shortly sweep up the leader, who survives as we head out now towards the Muur itself.
This is the Armstrong group, and they're not too far behind either. They can't be very much more than 25 or 30 seconds, and Armstrong is having a great day here, just sitting at the back of the group, riding a very defensive role, and something he doesn't always have to do. And I would say psychologically he's enjoying the Tour of Flanders today. That's Mark Wouters, the Rabobank rider, wearing 21, just coming onto the back of the group. Frankie Hoy is in there in the yellow jersey for Team Coast as well. But there's not an awful lot of impetus and organisation in this group, because there's a lot of tactical manoeuvring going on. Obviously, the 2 Mappe riders don't want to work, and Freddie Rodriguez either doesn't want to either.
So it looks like it's 42 seconds there. So they've lost a little bit on that climb. Wouters, rather than coming on, I think he's coming back on, Paul, because I think he was dislodged on the climb, but he's got himself back on. And, well, the gap is opening again just a bit, as we're now heading out towards Gerardsbergen and the climb of the Wall of Grammont. That comes at the top. It's just 15 kilometers left to ride. So I suppose they are about 8 kilometers from the climb itself, at least the leader is.
They have 10 to 12 miles of riding on these smooth open roads right now, and psychologically they'll all be getting ready for what is going to be a very difficult Muur de Grammont. They will know now that the race is in their grasp, but they will try and encourage the other riders in the group to come forward and work together. It seems as if there aren't too many passengers right now in this group. Everybody realizes now, as they get the time gaps coming up to them all of the time, that there is a very serious group behind, containing Armstrong and Zanini. And they are, as you say, 42 seconds back. We're now 25 kilometers to go to the finish.
Well, and he's just inside a minute for the leader, Erwin Thijs. 57 seconds. This is one of the 2 greatest single-day classics in the world. The other is Paris-Roubaix. I never know which one I like best, Paul, but this one is always a joy to commentate on.
Well, each one has its own specific attractions, and I think the attraction about this race, the Tour of Flanders, is that it's got so many cobblestones. It's almost got as much cobblestones as Paris-Roubaix, but they are all uphill, and that's the remarkable thing about it.
I know that Sean Kelly regrets never having won this. He came so close. I think it was 3 occasions. He was up there in 2nd place, but he never quite got the win. He was beaten by some surprising non-sprinters as well. Kicked himself right around his Irish living room. But he never got the win in this race, which everybody wants to win.
Johan Museeuw has won it 3 times there. You've got the team manager there of Lotto coming forward. That's Jos Brakeveld talking there to Peter van Petegem. You can see the difference in the style of the man on the left-hand side there, Erwin Thijs. He really is suffering like a dog at the moment. He just is hoping that he can stay off the front a little bit longer, but he knows almost certainly before the Muur de Grammont he will get caught by the heads of state of this year's Tour of Flanders. Museeuw, Phil, is up and down this group like a yo-yo. He's looking at the faces of all of the riders. He's not quite sure who is going to be the strongest man in the group, but he will certainly, I would think, try and launch some kind of an attack when we get to the slopes of the Muur de Grammont. But you know what? He is not going to get rid of Peter van Petegem that easily.
No, he's got to be afraid of him, because he was my favourite at the start, and he's got in the move. He's got to be the danger man here. He's got to be the rider who will want to take this race out. And there he is, taking the line through at the moment, as Massalia is asking for a drink. This group are still showing no concern for the man ahead. They're allowing him to come back to them. They know his legs won't take him to the finish, despite the fact he's inside 15 miles, that's all to go.
It's not very far after leaving Bruges this morning at 9:45. We're now coming up to 4:30 in the afternoon local time. These guys have been in the saddle for almost 6 hours of racing. Museeuw at the back of this group right now, keeping an eye on everybody else. Andrea Taffy, he will be thinking about winning this, and just watch out for the move here. This could be a sensible move. Taffy's going. He had his man Nardello on the front there, and Taffy trying to open a gap, but the man to respond is in the red and black jersey of Lotto. Peter van Petegem is not going to give anybody a chance right now to move off the front of this group.
No, they were waiting for somebody to make the move, and there it was. It came from Andrea Taffy. Who else? Taffy's been a World Cup winner on many occasions, but he's never had a podium finish in the Tour of Flanders, and that would be a nice result for him today to make a top 3. He's not a great sprinter, so he's got to go on his own, I think.
Team car of Domo Farm Frites there coming alongside. It's Mark Sargent, the team manager for them today. In fact, Patrick Lefebvre, having had a little bit of a heart crisis a few years ago, having followed Paris-Roubaix, doesn't follow in the team car very often these days. He leaves it up to Mark Sargent, but you can be certain he's not far from the finish line here, watching all of this unfold on television.
A number of riders now want drinks and/or information, or both. They're all getting very, very nervous here now, and you don't allow Johan Museeuw to pedal calmly to the front, because he'll pedal calmly out of sight if you give him a chance. There's the gap. It's opening still to the Armstrong group, so I don't think we're going to see them come back at Zalandiger, but only 42 seconds to the catch of Erwin Thijs.
It's too tactical right now in the group behind. There are too many men there who want to sit on anybody who's doing the pacemaking. Armstrong is a great man to have in that group for George Hincapie. If Armstrong wasn't in that group, they may also think about riding a little bit harder to try and pull them back as well. Now watch this, Museeuw at the back of the group, tightening up the straps, and Taffy goes again.
Andrea Taffy will never let you down. What a great bike rider he is. He livens it up whenever it gets dull. Taffy's gone again. Nardello is getting the soft ride, but what he wants, because Nardello is a very good single-day rider and has a little bit of a sprint as well. But Andrea Taffy needs to go alone, and if they play tactics, this is the man who will ride away with the 86 Tour of Flanders as he pedals now towards the second last climb of the day. But look at this, all back together. Reaction coming from George Hincapie.
Well, it's setting itself up now very nicely for the Mur de Grammont, which is not very much more than about 5 kilometers away from here. At the summit of the Mur de Grammont, there are 16 kilometers to go to the finishing line. And this group now of 8 riders are trying to figure out just exactly how they're going to handle it. But watch out for Museeuw, because in the past he's launched some pretty strange tactics. A few years ago, when everybody was waiting for the Mur de Grammont, he attacked on the Berendries and caught everybody by surprise and soloed 31 kilometers to the finish. So he's the kind of man who will wait for an opportunity to present itself, and if it does, he'll snatch it quickly.
Van Petegem going back for a word of advice. It's just on a minute now, this group ahead of the Armstrong group, but only 25 seconds behind the leader, Erwin Thijs. And 21 kilometers to go, and we go over the top of the Mur de Grammont with 15 left to ride.
There's the lone leader. After her long day in the saddle, 240 kilometers at the front of the bike race, he knows now that it's all over. He's not going to be the first man onto the Mur de Grammont as he was onto the Koppenberg. The first bike rider to reach the Koppenberg in 15 years in the Tour of Flanders. But for him now, they're cleaning up the gap behind him. And in fact, you can just see that group of 8 riders in the distance.
She's going to be very hard pushed now to get onto the slopes even of Gerardsberg and in the town itself. Daniel Nardello, he was 5th in this race last year, 1 place worse than Rolf Sorensen, the only 2 riders who placed in the top 7 men at the end of last year's Tour of Flanders. Taffy's gone back for a rest, but Sorensen, you see, doesn't give anybody a rest. He's opened up a little bit of a gap and wants that last position for as long as he can hang on to it. But Taffy's also in trouble. I think Messalia is also in trouble, Paul. He's really gritting his teeth. The strong men to me look to be Hincapie, Van Petegem and Museeuw.
20 kilometers to go now, Phil, and these guys almost certainly must be thinking about how to launch the attack. Messalia and Rolf Sorensen have been the 2 weakest bike riders in the group so far. They've gone off the back several times, but they are both intelligent bike riders. They will use as little energy as possible when they're going to the front right now and try and conserve just a little bit of kick left to try and pull themselves back in over the summit of these climbs. But now watch out for Museeuw. Moving forward, he's keeping a very close eye on Andrea Taffy. He's very strong at the moment. The Flemish Lion, the man who I'm sure 99% of the crowd here at the finish line would love to have win.
Now we're panning forward, I'm afraid, to find Erwin Thijs. There he is, the lone man, the trailblazer of this year's Tour of Flanders. Broke away at circa 30 kilometres into this race today, and here we are 20 from the finish. So as we speak, 214 kilometres in the lead, and he's still going on. I'm not too sure about the red light flashing on that motorbike. I hope it makes it to the finish. Something
to do with too much hot pressure, I think, in the oil.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right, Erwin, it's all over for you, but what a great man. Taffy again.
Ride.
Taffy, what a man. He's going to go again and again in this breakaway to try and outfox the Domo duo there of Cassani and Johan Museeuw. The man isolated here a little bit is Pieter van Petegem.
I'm just trying to listen there what they're saying at him from the back of the car. But unfortunately, Rolf is now able to speak with his own tongue, because he's now sponsored by a Danish team, which was a great ambition in his retiring years, was to ride for a home pro squad, which he's now doing and proving to be the best of the squad as well. And he's riding superbly, but he's tired. Remember, he did finish 4th last year, and he wasn't happy with that because he made a mess of the finish. And Daniel Nardello in the breakaway here, number 75, finished 5th, and now they're about to throw a net over the escaper of the day. The man of the match, as it were, Erwin Thijs, 220 kilometres in the lead, and now he is surrendering to a very elite group of bike riders. If he's got any legs to continue, then a high finish still awaits him in Meerbeker, because there aren't many riders left in this race.
Well, I reckon just about now the man with the big hammer is going to come along and bonk him on the head, because he really will be demoralized by the fact that he's been caught right now. He will try and survive, but there's no way after the breakaway that he's been in the lead for he will be able to survive on the slopes of the Mur de Grammont. But a great chance for him to see the heads of states. And
nice one, Taffy.
Taffy's a great bloke, coming up alongside there, just encouraging him and saying well done, and that's where they're going, Phil. The Mur de Grammont, the Muur van Geraardsbergen, and this is where we, I think, are going to see this group split. But it's been so tactical so far. It's going to be amazing to see the big mano a mano, I think, which is going to happen between Pieter van Petegem and Johan Museeuw, and I'm certain that George Hincapie's got the legs to follow.
Well, let's go the whole hog, Paul. I'll bet you €1 that Johan Museeuw launches the first attack.
I'm not sure I've got €1, Phil, but anyway, we'll go for $1. That'll do.
Okay, and that's it. 2 kilometres to the climb of the wall of Geraardsbergen, which is one of the centres, the epicenter, if you like, of racing in Flanders. This wall that stands out of the town. It is a vicious climb. Nobody's allowed to go over it except the riders in the race and the immediate officials, because they can't risk a car breakdown on it. They send them around and wait for the race over the top.
Very nervous now. These guys all know this race running now. All of these guys have been here before. They're just dropping down across the main road, over the bridge you can see in the distance there, through the center of Geraardsbergen, and then the climb will commence. The run into the climb has changed a bit over the last couple of years, and it makes it a very long ascent of the Mur de Grammont. And then once they get to the top, the organization have managed to wheedle out a few more cobblestones as well, and they take them up above the chapel, which really adds an extra 400-500 meters to this climb.
Well, who would like to be Erwin Thijs right now? The man knows what lies ahead of him. He knows how his legs are feeling after 220 odd kilometers at the head of the Tour of Flanders. He knows that very shortly the field will make the way left and then start the twisting climb up over the top of the wall. And he won't be there over the top, but let's hope he can grab a few riders, perhaps like Rolf Sorensen, and maybe produce a very good result.
Down into town right now. There's a huge crowd waiting for these riders. Cassani is doing the job now that the day was only expected to bring to him, to look after Johan Museeuw. Museeuw spot on for his rendezvous with the one-day classics. Next week he's got a chance at Paris-Roubaix. But this is the one, Phil, that I think he really wants. He should actually really have 4 wins, because he got beaten so narrowly in a 2-up sprint by Gianni Bugno. And I don't think he could understand at all why the Italian was able to get by him. And that was a very close photo finish, and a very sad Johan Museeuw at the end of that day.
But if you could get 4 now, what a way to end your career. And he was in all the papers as a hot favourite to get the 4th victory. Now we're doing the snakes across the market square here in Geraardsbergen. Very shortly now, as we say goodbye just about to Erwin Thijs, there'll be a left turn coming up, and then we start the cobbled approach to the top of the wall. And Pieter van Petegem is in an excellent position now to launch an attack. Johan Museeuw is near the back at the moment, but that doesn't mean too much. He's got the back wheel of George Hincapie, in fact. He sent Kasani up here to keep the pace up as hard as he can go before he drops off. There's the hero, now concentrating on just getting himself through to the finish in Meerbeker. He knows that once over the top of the wall, he has barely 10 miles to go, and I've just won myself a Euro, Paul, because there he goes.
Spot on. You knew he was going to do it. Everybody waited for that move there. Andrea Taffy's the first man to respond here. Peter van Petegem is there as well. This man knows the Muur de Grammont. He wants to hit them hard. He's got an advantage right now of around about 20 meters, but Peter van Petegem is going to try and slowly peg him back, and in third place there, looking pretty comfortable, is Georgi Hincapie. They've blown the race apart, but Van Petegem has come back to the wheel of the Lion of Flanders, and so too has Daniele Nardello.
Well, he's looked over his shoulder, he's seen it hasn't worked quite, so he's eased back, and he's got himself now just the 3 riders who have won the Tour of Flanders, including himself. No, sorry, 1 rider, Van Petegem, and himself, Museeuw. Hincapie, who would like to join the elite, is there. Nardello is there. And 1 rider just clawing his way back on has got to be Andrea Taffy.
Absolutely, making it 5 riders at the front of the group. That was a pretty vicious attack there by Johan Museeuw. He doesn't have that super form that he had a few years ago when he rode away from everybody on this slope. The man in command right now, though, is Peter van Petegem. Hincapie, Phil, responded very well there, and he is, I would say, right now, probably the fastest man in this group. We get a chance now just to see how far ahead of the rest of the group they are now. Just 5 men left. Van Petegem looks very relaxed indeed. He's setting the tempo. That's the best thing to do here, but watch out. Andrea Taffy's not shot his last bullet.
He's going to fire one right now as he comes over the top of George Hincapie. This is an amazing race. I think these guys are all committed now, and there's not a lot left in any of their legs. As Taffy locks up as he tries the move. Now it's the move by Peter van Petegem. Can George Hincapie dig deep? He'll have to, because Museeuw is now in trouble, and so too is Nardello. But there he goes again. This man is such a talent, and he's such an example to all young bike riders. He never gives up, ever.
That's all to do with his mind frame. He knew that the Muur de Grammont was going to be difficult. He attacked them to begin with. He just allowed these 2 guys to go, but he's waiting for the different grades, and that's why he's responded now. He's getting it into a bigger gear. He's going to ride now back onto the tail of Georgi Hincapie and Peter van Petegem. But watch out too for the 2 Mappé boys, because they are coming back as well. They're over the summit. 5 men lead the Ronde van Vlaanderen with 10 miles to go.
Unbelievable. And we're commentating obviously from the finishing line in Meerbeker, and the crowd here are watching a television just like we are, and they are roaring encouragement at the screen, because they are seeing the attacking riding of the Belgian riders. I've had a thin time of it lately in the Tour of Flanders. And nice to see that I'm still in here. Look, behind Zanini is Fred Rodriguez. He's still in with World Cup points here today. Now, can we see the big figure of the leader? And Lance Armstrong off to the left. And surely Cipollini is somewhere in this pack. But you know, we could be saluting a new leader of the World Cup tonight, and it might well be Fred Rodriguez.
Well, he only needs a few points to get himself ahead of Mario Cipollini. He's ridden a brilliant race so far, but so too has Cipollini. Armstrong there looking very good and comfortable. Tom Boonen, also the young Belgian rider, is still in with a chance of a high finish here at the Tour of Flanders.
Really well.
And I think at the end of the day, Lance Armstrong will tap him on the shoulders and say, well done, young man, thanks for that.
You bet your life. Now looking at the camera go, so didn't see Cipollini there at the moment. Back up to where the race is, and this is the front of the race now for the first time in about 5 or 6 hours. Museeuw is going to take a few deep breaths. Now, we used to call Van Hooijdonk the boss of the Bosberg, because he won his races by attacking on the Bosberg, the last climb of the race. Now it's going to have to be left to somebody like Museeuw to go again. I don't think he can take this out in the sprint now.
He didn't have the big acceleration. 15 kilometers to go right now, and Taffy not very happy, because it seems the impetus has gone out of this break. You saw Taffy on the front just now waving his arms, gesticulating, trying to get all of these riders to keep themselves organized, and they need to keep working together, Phil, because that large group with Zanini, Armstrong and Rodriguez are still not very much more than around about a minute behind. So if they mess around in this leading group of 5, they could find themselves being rather surprised by the return of what is rather a big group.
Which they don't want at this stage. 28 seconds, that's all they are behind. They're saying peloton, but I would have thought the remnants of the breakaway is probably at 28 seconds and the peloton just behind, but we'll find out. These are the 5 leaders of the Tour of Flanders. The sun now getting high in the sky. They left the marketplace in Bruges at 10:15 local time this morning. It is now 20 minutes to 5 in the afternoon. That is a long day by any standards riding in a bike race.
These are the chasers: Cassani, Rolf Sorensen, Gabriel Misaglia. We were pretty certain that both Sorensen and Misaglia were tired because we'd seen them suffer on a couple of previous climbs. But when you're in a situation like this at the Tour of Flanders, you have to use all of your experience. They suffered on the climb of the Mur de Grammont, but now they're trying to use every last bit of energy to get themselves back into this bike race.
Rolf Sorensen, these are the rides, I think, at 28 seconds. But there's not a lot left in the legs of either Sorensen or Misaglia. And I'm sure the same's got to be said of Cassani. He's done his job well. He gave it his best shot to launch his team leader on the wall, and now he's just having to survive. They're still fighting out 6th place, though, and that, even so, would be a great result for Rolf. But I think Misaglia might take the sprint there.
The 5 leaders now will be looking very shortly at attacking the Bosberg. The riders from Mapei are in the strongest position right now. They've got 1 man at the front, Andrea Tafi, 1 man at the back, Daniele Nardello. They are in the best tactical position right now to be able to launch one attack and then counter immediately afterwards. But I have a feeling that most of these guys are pretty nailed right now. They're having a hard time. They don't have the big accelerations. The man who looked the most comfortable on that climb was certainly Peter van Petegem. Yep. And he would love to win this bike race for a second time.
He still remains the favourite, I think, marginally so, perhaps over Hincapie now. Could be a shoulder-to-shoulder sprint there. The group is coming back. It's taken a while. They're knocking a second off every 500 meters or so of the chase. There's another one gone. It's down to 20 now. I'm not sure that they will allow those 3 back on, though. They must be extremely tired, because these boys aren't racing that fast now. There's another second knocked off. You never know, they might get back yet. Last climb of the day, the Bosberg, is on the horizon, and when we go over the top of that, there's just 12 kilometers or 7 miles to the finish.
I wonder what's going through Georgi Hincapie's mind right now. He's in an ideal situation. He's the fastest man in this group, but it's such a risk to wait for a group of 5 riders like this to go to the finish line, especially when you've got men like Tafi and Nardello in there as well. If Georgi's got brilliant legs, he needs to, for once in his life, take a super risk and try and launch himself off the front. If he feels as good as his pedaling action is telling me that he is, he maybe ought to try and surprise these guys by launching an attack over the summit of the Bosberg.
I wonder if George will try just once on this climb. The Bosberg is a nasty little climb, but these boys are riding tactically now. I think they're afraid of one another, because I think they're almost equal in ability. They're all very tired men. The big danger for me, Paul, is the surprise Nardello.
Well, he's a great bike rider. He's the Italian national champion, and what a look up for the books that would be if he could win the Tour of Flanders with the Italian national jersey on his shoulders. And just as an anecdote, in fact, Andrea Tafi won Paris-Roubaix wearing that jersey. Tafi, I reckon, is setting himself up for another attack. We're on the Bosberg right now, 13 kilometers to go, and right now nobody really wants to make the move.
Well, I don't know, Tafi, for a second I thought Tafi was going to go up the inside and give it a shot, but well, what is he now? No, he's answering an attack here. And I think it's Museo who's gone. Museo's desperate effort now to shed the group, but Van Petegem is strong. Hincapie is strong. The other 2, I think, lack a little bit of urgent reaction, but they get on anyway. But I think this is the swan song for Johan. I'm not sure he can win Flanders now, but he's ridden a brilliant bike race, and he might well rue the day when he lost in that photo finish against Gianni Bugno some years back, because he may not be winning 4 after all. Peter van Petegem looks the best, do you think? He
really is good. He's responded to all of the attacks right now. Museo has done everything he can to try and win this bike race, but I think right now maybe age is telling just a little bit. He doesn't have the ability to keep on the acceleration once he's started. Nothing has happened to that group, and Nardello, look at this. Nardello is waiting for the counterattack. He knows Museo. He's ridden with him for many, many years, and he just tried to nibble away and see if he could open an advantage over the top. We're now at the summit of the last climb of the day in the Ronde van Vlaanderen, the Bosberg, and 12 kilometers to go to the finish.
Yes, so we swing back to the 3 chasers, led by Sorensen, followed by Cassani and Misaglia. I don't think anybody in that front group now has the legs to destroy anybody in that front group. But, you know, they've got to watch out now for the crafty move, the one where they slip away rather than attack away, because we're on the long run-in now, the flatter roads. It's block headwind for most of the run into the finish. You can see the flags there, they're blowing strongly, and when your legs are tired after nearly 260 kilometers, then the headwind will have an effect. Taffy's the obvious choice to try to slip away.
Well, Taffy will try again, I'm absolutely certain. In fact, there's a rider in a white jersey trying to move. But you know, what could very well happen will be the setup for Daniele Nardello. Let's not forget, we've seen him put in some pretty serious sprints over his career.
Yeah.
And if it comes down to the finish like this, he could be the man that really would surprise George Hincapie. I think the greatest thing that he's won in his career, really, though, is the Italian National Championships. He's tried so many times before, and last year he took that title just before the Tour de France.
Yes, but he's been a good World Cup rider. He's always been a podium finish. Tour of Lombardy, he's had a run-up spot there. He's finished 9th in the Amstel Gold, 6th in Paris, Brussels, 5th in the San Sebastian Classic. He's been knocking on the door of the big races, but he hasn't won one yet. And 5th, of course, in this event last year, so he won't want to finish 5th again, especially after the effort he's put in today. He wants a top 3 finish. He's never done that in the Tour of Flanders. 28 seconds, those boys are going away from the group again, as Museo rather craftily waves Taffy into the gap. And this is very typical Johan now. He's now reassessing his chances. Such a clever bike rider. I once remember, oh, and there it goes. Well, it had to come. Taffy's on his way. And the big launch of the attack, reaction from Van Petegem. And George Hincapie a little bit slow, but will line up behind Johan Museo okay. They're not allowing the move, are they? They're straight on.
You've got to be straight on at this stage of the game. 10 kilometers to go to the finish line. You really have to make sure as soon as the guy moves, especially a man like Andrea Taffy, you have to respond immediately without thinking about it, because if you give him 50 meters, it is very difficult after 250 kilometers in the saddle to nail it back.
Well, just to finish the story then on Museo, if we get 5 seconds, I once asked Johan at the start what his tactics were going to be to win the Tour of Flanders. In fact, he won it on this occasion. He simply laughed and said, "I'm not telling you, you might go and tell the riders." And so that's the sort of man he is. He keeps everything to himself and he plays his cards well.
Being very attentive right now. He's going to have to watch out, because Taffy will try and launch another attack. I was surprised to see there was no counter move there coming from Daniele Nardello as we go under the banner indicating 10 kilometers to go to the finish.
All flat except the rise up to the finish with the tricky right-hand bend. You must not lead out too early. These boys are also getting nervous that the 3 chasers are closing in, but in fact they're not. And we've had no further information on the main field behind them. But now Johan has decided it's time to just watch and wait and sit at the back here. He knows that people like Taffy will keep on giving it a go. Taffy just rolls through. Van Petegem, he's going to feel confident he can win this in the sprint and win his 2nd Tour of Flanders. But what's George Hincapie thinking? I'd like to know that. He looks strong, and we just can't get any feeling of just where he sits in this breakaway right now.
Well, he knows how to sprint, but I tell you one thing, Phil, the sprint up the finishing straight here in Meerbeke is a very difficult sprint to work out, because if you start too soon, you really can find yourself fading rapidly, because it doesn't look like much. There's another move. Taffy digging away at the front there. He's going to keep going any chance he gets to try and slip off the front. But I've seen so many riders in the past make an absolute catastrophe of the sprinting up here to the line. And that's, in fact, what Sean Kelly did when he finished 2nd to Audrey van der Poel. He led out for so far and ended up getting 2nd on the line.
Yeah, well, they're all working through, and that's rather good. Nobody is missing a turn now.
Museo, he's at the front right now. These guys are trying to figure out what the run into the finish is going to be like. Museo must obviously be dreaming. There's another move. Taffy again, you see, but this is dangerous when Museo forces somebody else to make the move. You see how Museo then just hung back a slight fraction to force Van Petegem to be the man who would make the acceleration to pull back the Italian attack.
Well, we're looking at 5 riders who between them have won, and wait for this, Paul, 188 races in their careers in total. So none of them are shy. The majority of them have all been very close or have won World Cup races. This is an elite escape, so they're having to apply every tactic they've learned over their careers to beat one another. They all know the tricks, they all know the game, and they all know what it's like to win. And I suppose I should add, they all want to win today.
Everybody does. It is going to be so difficult. These guys, I think, are all pretty much tired, and no one has really got the ability to launch an attack off the front. The only way a man could go solo to the finish right now is because of tactical maneuvering, a matching of these riders one against each other. For the moment, it seems that there's no problem. Now Mizzou's trying it.
Here we go again. And this is the second one by Museo now. He couldn't make it on the hill, but you see the old zip is not quite there again. Heavily marked. These boys are paying attention today. And Van Petegem has made George Hincapie close it down and didn't take up the reaction.
Well, he actually forced Hincapie to go forward. Hincapie was hoping that Van Petegem was going to be the man to close the gap now. And I think Van Petegem, now watch this, Van Petegem's going for the move up the inside, going to try and surprise them. Well,
this is just over 8 kilometres from the finish, and that's a good move as they went over the traffic bumps there. He's jumped clear, he's caught the car, the motorcycle's completely out of sync there and causing a bit of trouble because he can't get through. Now, this is the huge problem here. They should not have been caught like that. I mean, we knew that he was going to attack sooner or later. Why didn't they? He's got in amongst the cyclists now, motorcyclists rather. The reaction is coming from Mappé, and I think that spoilt his attack.
Well, it slowed him down, definitely going through town there. That was a big surprise for the motorbikes. The man in the yellow there is trying to get everybody out of the way just so that the race is not falsified. Coming across the gap there, it looked as if Nardello was the first man to respond. He's around about 50 meters behind. But now, George, this is the time you've got to take responsibility. This is the moment you have to prove you're a champion.
He's got to go because Taffy won't go. Museo, I don't believe, has the legs. It's got to be George who puts it up, and really it's no good making the pace. He's got to jump away from these two and try to reach the two leaders. This is the most crucial moment of the race so far, and it's psychologically the moment. But here comes Nardello. If he contacts with Van Petegem, then the other three are out of it.
I would say it's all over. It doesn't look as if Van Petegem is absolutely flying along right now, and he may well be just backing off a little bit to allow Nardello to come up, because almost certainly Nardello is going to work hard with him.
I think we have seen the winning move. It's a question whether Nardello or Van Petegem will win now, and it looks as though Nardello is going to get on terms here, because Museo, I don't think there's much left, and George is on his own back there. The gap has opened very quickly. Van Petegem has seen Nardello coming across. He's eased slightly to allow him on, because two are better than one on this last headwind race to the finish, and Van Petegem is a very crafty rider too. There's the gap. Museo still willing to work. George certainly still willing to work. Taffy getting a free ride. If they do get back up, Taffy will win.
Well, he'll go for the attack almost certainly. If they are able to make the junction, then Taffy will have to launch the counter-attack. That must be the tactics of the Mappé squad right now. But it was good to see that Museo had come to the front. You just saw the little twitch of his arm encouraging George Hincapie to come forward as well. They are slowly but surely edging their way forward again. You see those two men there on the front of that three-man group. George Hincapie and Johan Museo are working together as one. But watch out for the junction, because Taffy is now relaxing, he's breathing, he's waiting for his moment to pounce.
And it's going to come when they contact, because he's lying nicely a length or so off the wheel. Museo knows, he's looking where he is. He knows he's going to move. He is such a wonderful bike rider. He knows Taffy is going to jump, and he's going to watch him. Well, I really didn't think that was going to come back, and it did. And here, a little bit of a false one, that, I think.
He wanted to surprise Museo, but at the same time, he was just getting out of the saddle. Museo turned round, and he knew that the move was going to come. He really is the master tactician. He's pulled himself back to that group. It looked very much like the winning move for a few moments there, and Museo actually manoeuvred the situation to prevent Andrea Taffy from counter-attacking.
Well, this has been a great race today, the 86th edition of the Tour of Flanders. All of these riders deserved to cross the line in first place, but I'm afraid only one will. And Nardello has gone back into his place, and Van Petegem lives to think again as we go under what I think will be 5 kilometers to go. It is just 3 miles from the finish now. Remember that the finish is slightly uphill after a sharp right-hand turn. Very difficult judge for the sprinters.
It's a very difficult sprint to judge. It's so long from the corner down there. It's around about 500 meters from the bottom corner up to the finish line, and slowly but surely it drags up all of the time, eating a rider's strength away. Let's just have a look there at this moment when Peter Van Petegem got into the barrage of motorbikes in front of him. He was definitely slowed down there. Those bikes could not get out of the way because of all the other bikes in front of them, and in fact it was almost the moment when he could have got himself 150 meters lead.
Yes, we'll never know if it spoiled his victory run. I don't think it did myself, but they really should not be there, and there'll be questions asked tonight, I'm sure, when they get back in to the press room. But we're looking now at 5 bike riders. So quickly recap, remember it was the US Post that led the charge onto the old Claremont. It was there where the first selection was made, still pursuing a breakaway of 4 riders, and primarily on his own, Erwin Thijs. And then the next selection came a little bit further down the road after the Koppenberg, and then these 5 got clear. The Lance Armstrong group almost came on but didn't. They failed by about 20 seconds to get on. They've fallen back, and Erwin Thijs was caught and dropped on the wall of Gerardsbergen. Now we've got these 5 left at 4 kilometers from the finish.
It's becoming very tactical right now, Phil. These guys at the moment are trying to wait. They're trying to listen to all of the movements that are coming from behind them. They're looking at the shadows on the road to see if somebody's going to try a last-minute surprise attack. Van Petegem, you see, very attentive, keeping his eyes on Andrea Tafi. They all know the tactics of Tafi, the Italian there in 4th position. He will attack and attack as many times as he can to try and surprise him, and there it is.
And here it goes. Tafi's gone again, just inside 4 kilometers. The reaction from Museo, but the old zip still not there. Hincapie's Mark Museo should go over the top, because if he doesn't, this is a huge effort by Tafi. He's won World Cup races like this before, and this is his swan song. This is everything he's got now with 4 kilometers to go. Van Petegem has sensed that none of the other riders have the legs. He's got to do it himself. But you see, Museo has marked Van Petegem. Now, the battle that's going on behind might be to Tafi's advantage.
Well, it might be, because you can see right now Museo was right onto the wheel of Peter Van Petegem there. Right now you have to nail this man down quickly. It's no good trying to work at a stage like this. You must use the sprint that you've got and accelerate over the top to make the junction. Hincapie now has to do it. He's going up alongside Johan Museo. The advantage of Andrea Tafi with 3 kilometers to go is not very much more than 50 meters, but it could be enough.
Well, our pictures have decided to give us a spot of bother, but don't worry, we'll stay with these pictures now as we'll sort it out towards the finish. But I really hope the camera, which is looking at these riders, hasn't gone down at this crucial moment. There's nothing we can do about it. But in your screen are the 4 chasing riders. The gap is still there to this man, Andrea Tafi, holding his own out in the lead. And this is an amazing break, and it's 100% effort now, Paul. If he gets caught, he's out of it.
There's nothing he can do now. He has to give every last possibility to try and stay off the front. He won't be holding anything back at all at the moment, Phil, because he knows if he does hold something back, there is a big chance that these guys will come back to him. He is still only holding a 50 to 75 meter advantage there, and this group is working together. Hincapie slotting into 2nd place there behind Johan Museo. Peter Van Petegem is there in 3rd. These guys have to work hard together right now, because if Tafi goes into the last kilometer with 100 meters advantage, it is all over.
So these are the riders now. 4 of them are riding behind Andrea Tafi, the man who is the great escape artist, the man who has won Paris-Roubaix, Paris Tours. He also, I saw him win like this, Paul, in England when he won the Rochester Classic, when it was a race that counted in the World Cup. And this would be a first time in the top 3 now for Andrea Tafi, and it could be the win.
Well, that's what he's looking for right now. It's a solo effort. It really isn't very much at all. He is just hovering there, but you can see the urgency now. Peter Van Petegem feels that he can win this Tour of Flanders, but this is not good. The way they're riding right now is playing into the hands of Andrea Tafi, but it actually looks as if the gap is starting to shorten.
I don't think he's won it yet, but that is a long way from the helicopter, a little bit further than it appears from the ground level cameras. But Van Petegem is looking a bit frustrated now, doesn't quite know what to do here. It's a question whether Tafi has got the strength to survive now, because his legs must be tired as he heads towards the kite to come, but inside 2 kilometers to go. I think in his final year, this would go down as his greatest win, including Paris-Roubaix.
Well, it would, but the race is not over now. There's another move coming. Peter Van Petegem accelerating. They won't get any help at all from the man in the tricolor jersey of the Italian champion, Daniele Nardello. He's a teammate of the man in front. They're now into the street of Meerbeke. They come around this corner and they will see the red kite in front of them. There it is. It is famous in this town for the finish line of the Tour of Flanders. They really don't have very much further to go. Tafi is still holding on, and if they play that tactical maneuver any much longer, he is going to stay clear to the finish.
Andre Taffy, almost 36 years of age, one of the oldest men in the race, and one of the most popular, it has to be said, has won the Tour of Flanders. He's going to ride away from them now. He's still got the little right turn, which will take him the last 500 meters, but the tactics are on now in the race for second place, and Andre Taffy has caught them napping. This will go down as one of his finest ever victories, victory number 30 in a career which began in 1989. Nardello will be happy, Museo frustrated. What will Van Petegem think? And George Hincapie wants to finish this off now with a fine second place, and that's the way it's going to be, because this race is over and they've got to watch behind as well, because the chase is on. And now Andre Taffy is beginning the celebrations. This is a magnificent crowd, one of the biggest I've ever seen for the Tour of Flanders. A beautiful spring day in Belgium as Italy continue to dominate Belgium's biggest bike race. Andre Taffy salutes the crowd. Win number 30 it is, his first win of the season. Boy, this man has got a great palmarès. He can add this to the Tour of Lombardy, Paris-Brussels, the Rochester Classic, Paris-Roubaix, and he's now got to add to it Paris Tours, and finally the Tour of Flanders. A fantastic victory there for Andre Taffy. Now comes the sprint for second place as they head up now towards the line. Nardello, the danger sprinter. Hincapie is forced out of it, I think, as they come clear, and Johan Museo, I think, maybe just pipped on the line there, but he may not. I think Museo got it. So he really is going to kick himself now, Paul.
Well, he certainly is. He really was the strongest man, and these are the remnants of that leading group of 8 riders coming up to the line as well. Museo had the kick, and I think that was why he was a little bit worried, Phil. He thought those old legs of his didn't have the acceleration anymore, but at the end of the day, they certainly did. A brilliant ride by him, but what a move by Andre Taffy. He goes again and again and again just to wear everybody out. This is Rolf Sorensen coming up to the line right now with Cassani and Gabriel Misaglia.
And Sorensen looking for a 6th place finish here, and he was in 4th place last year. Now can he just hang on? Yes, he can. Another brilliant ride from the big Danish rider. So Sorensen comes over the line ahead of Cassani and Misaglia, who they're both really exhausted. Oh, this has been a wonderful day for Andre Taffy. He speaks English, he speaks French, as well as, of course, his native tongue. And he is such a popular rider. The welcome he got in the Tour de Langkawi and the Tour Down Under, where he was in effect riding farewell races in far-off states and countries. And now here, still away from his home, he salutes the biggest crowd we've seen so far. And you know, it just goes to show you never ever give up trying to win a bike race. He tried on the climbs, he tried on the flat, and whenever they caught him, he simply tried again. In the end, it paid off for him. And Johan Museo will be absolutely fuming, because he's now slotted in to the 2nd place in the Tour of Flanders for a 3rd time, which marries up with his 3 first place wins as well. Well, Andre Taffy, we first came to know him when he turned pro back in 1989, when he rode in Miami, Florida, winning a stage of the old Tour of Americas. And I looked at my co-commentator then on American television and said, I've never heard of him. And well, we've all heard of him now in his final year as a pro. And I was around the breakfast table in the Tour Down Under in Australia when he suggested it would be his final year. He's the battle for the minor places now, and there's Big Cipollini. He's taking valuable World Cup points there, and Rodriguez will be just on the edge of scoring points, only just. But certainly Cipollini, with that sprint, by my reckoning, of course, will keep his lead in the World Cup competition. And this is the sprint for 2nd place here. Johan Museo now having 3 second places in the Tour of Flanders, getting the better of Peter Van Petegem. George Hincapie crossing the line. An excellent 4th place for the rider. Remember that Mappe had a couple of riders up in this breakaway. The American living up to all of the confidence placed in him by the team, and in particular Lance Armstrong.
Ludo, pretty tough race this year, and it was a bit strange because in that back group it was very tactical, with a lot of the Lampre riders a lot of the Mappe riders just sitting on the moves.
Yeah, it was a strange race today, but it was a very hard wind, and it was always in the front, the wind. And I had My wheel in the back was broken, and I had to change the wheel and had to do a long trace. Yeah.
But it seems as if the addition of the Koppenberg didn't really change very much the last 60, 70 kilometers of the race. It actually seemed as if it was not as tough as it was those years before.
Yeah, it was tougher, but with the wind in the front, it are the cyclists who made the race.
But you're in good form, and okay, a little bit of bad luck today. What about next week in Paris-Roubaix?
Yeah, I feel good on the cobblestones, and also today I feel my legs good for next week.
Congratulations anyway. Why did you have
George, first of all, can you tell me what the problem was with your bike?
My chain. I bridged up to Museo's group on the bottom of the Koppenberg, and as soon as we took the right corner, I went to put in a small chain ring and it got caught, and I bent the link. So the next 30 kilometers up the Koppenberg, even when I got in that original breakaway, my chain was broken. It was skipping every third pedal stroke, and it was impossible for Dirk to ride. So I had no choice. I just had to stay up there and wait. So that was kind of difficult to ride like that. And then I changed my bike on the Eikenberg. So I got a new bike there.
You must have had to stay pretty calm waiting at that crucial part of the race for the team car to come up, because it seemed like an awful long time to wait.
Yeah, I lost my cool a couple times because Dirk was just not coming, but I totally understand that he was behind probably 20 groups at that point. So I just needed to wait, and I realized that the only thing I could do was keep my cool. So I tried to calm down and relax and just wait for Dirk to show up.
It was an ideal situation at the end, 5 riders, but it seems as if nobody wanted to chase in an organized fashion.
No, when Taffy first got away, Museo said, we'll work together. So I started pulling, but then Van Pittigem wasn't pulling, and then Museo stopped pulling. And it was just we weren't working together. It would have been better if all three of us, gave a real hard effort with 1K to go. But I don't think at that point there wasn't much cooperation, normal in a World Cup.
It's a bit strange that everybody was expecting Taffy to move and nobody responded immediately, and that's the only way to get onto the back of an attack.
Yeah, definitely, especially when he attacked in the bit of a tailwind section. Taffy was super strong today. It was a big surprise that he was able to ride and win the race like that.
A bit of a blow to you psychologically because you felt that you could win this Tour of Flanders. Can you get your mind ready for next week in Paris-Roubaix?
It's definitely a blow, but not to my psyche, because I'm confident. I'm happy with the way I feel. I'm confident for the next couple of races. Thank you.
That's right, George.
Thanks.
You're still the first American.
Well, Paul Showing back alongside me now after the interview there with George Hincapie. But I'll tell you what, Paul, that was a great race.
It was a brilliant race, and there were great names up at the front there. Van Pittigem, Museo and Andrea Taffy. I'd really wanted Museo to win because this is probably his last year as a professional. To get the record would have been great. He proved to be a great battler. Yeah. But I think the man who won at the end of the day, Andrea Taffy, proves that consistency and attacking all of the time at the end of the day pays.
A lot of people are saying here how he outwitted the Belgians, and he certainly did that by just never giving up and always trying for the victory. I hope you enjoyed this coverage of the 86 Tour de Flanders. We've certainly enjoyed bringing it to you. This is a special one for the files. Until the next time, for Paul, I'm Phil Liggett saying goodbye.
Welcome to the Driesdag van de Panne, the 3 days of La Panne along the English Channel and not too far away from the North Sea. This race is always regarded as a pointer to the form for the upcoming one-day classics. The race is made up of 3 days and 4 individual stages. The first stage, 181 kilometers from Moeskroen to Zottegem, with 3 circuits around Zottegem taking in the Leiberg and the very famous Berendries climb. That's almost certainly where the decision is going to be made, and one man who knows that very well is the favourite for the race overall, Pieter van Petegem, who lives not too far away from the start here in Moeskroen. Georgie Hincapie, he seems to be right on form for this early season campaign. He started the year very well, but the crowd favourite is obviously Pieter van Petegem, a former winner of the Ronde van Vlaanderen, the Tour of Flanders, here with a very good teammate André Schmiel, the oldest man in the race at 39 years of age and almost certainly now in his last season as a professional cyclist. This man has garnered some of the greatest titles in the world of professional cycling: Milan-San Remo, the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix. A man to think about for the possible win overall is the very good Belgian time trialist Nico Eekhout. He too now leading a very strong and rejuvenated Lotto team, the flagship of Belgian cycling. And if you're looking for a new Belgian star, don't look any further than this young man, 21 years of age, a new signing for the US Postal Service, Tom Boonen. And don't ever forget the Vlaamse Leeuw, the Lion of Flanders, Johan Museeuw. This man has been Mr. Classics rider of the 1980s and 90s. He too riding his last season as a professional cyclist. The flag down for the start of the 181 kilometer stage from Moeskroen to Zottegem. Moeskroen, a small town just on the French border, not too far away from Roubaix, where most of these riders will be finishing the Great Paris-Roubaix in about 10 days' time. It's always a nervous start to the 3 days of La Panne because everybody knows that they're going over what is really a curtain raiser of the climbs they will face in the big one-day classic next Sunday. Well, on the Leiberg, this is Stefano Zanini, Marco Milesi in second place here. A little bit further back there, you can see Daniele Nardello, the Italian national champion. Almost certainly in this group as well will be the big favourite from the Lotto squad, Pieter van Petegem. These are climbs that the riders will face in the Ronde van Vlaanderen in around about 5 days' time. But this is a very difficult part of the course here. Zanini, no stranger at all to Belgium. He's come here many times before. And one man who really does ride well on Belgian roads is riding for one of the Italian teams. That's Ludo Dirksen. He's now being joined by Glyn Dollander. This young man started his professional career with the Vlaanderen 2002 team, and now he's moved across to the very good Lotto squad. The team really flying very well this year with great victories so far in the Tour of Bessèges at the start of the season. Het Volk for Pieter van Petegem. The situation on the road at the moment is those 2 riders have a lead of around about 29 seconds over a small group, and the main field a little bit further back. At the front of that group there in the blue jersey, you can see the man is hoping to be on form for the next 10 days. That's George Hincapie. He's come so close to winning the Tour of Flanders and the big Paris-Roubaix race, and he hopes that this year will be the year that will help him. Now this is the group that is chasing the 2 leaders. In the group, Johan Museeuw, André Schmiel is in this group, and they're not very far behind now the leading duo of Ludo Dirksen and Glyn Dollander. The young man in the white there, by the way, a first-year professional, Bradley Wiggins, an Olympic silver medalist a couple of years ago in Sydney, and there is the junction. We are now looking at around about 16 leaders who have a 30-second advantage over the main field, and they're now coming over the Leiberg once again. Typical Flemish roads these, the riders are on. In fact, that leading group is 18 men strong, but the main field is right on their tails at the moment. Not very much more than 10 or 12 seconds advantage, and in the group there, in the orange and pink jersey of Lampre, you just get a glimpse of the man who was the national champion of Belgium a couple of years ago, Ludo Dirksens. It appears that it is all back together once again in this very aggressive opening stage. And for a change in the 3 days of the Panne, the weather is absolutely marvellous. It's a spring day here in the southern part of Belgium, and really a great contrast to the way this race is normally run in rainy, wet and cold conditions. But ideal preparation this year for the big one this weekend, the Ronde van Vlaanderen, and there will be hundreds of thousands of Belgians coming out to see this race with the hope that their man André Schmiel or even Johan Museeuw will win for a final time before they hang up their wills at the end of this season. Well, that group of 18 is still trying to hold off there. In fact, I have a feeling it came back together, and this is another group moving off the front at the moment. So again, the race very aggressive since the start. We're now looking at another ascent of the Leiberg, which will be a 6% climb. Not very much, but at the start of the season, when these guys put the hammer down, it certainly does help. Well, this is another group here as we look down there. Johan Museeuw no longer in this group. I caught a quick glimpse there of the South African rider, Robbie Hunter. Daniele Nardello was in here as well, but the main field still very keen to keep it all together. Indication that Johan Museeuw has missed out. There he is in 4th position there. The Flemish Lion will be looking to try and win the Ronde van Vlaanderen again, but if he can take the Tour, the 3 days of Le Panne on the way, that would be a very nice start to the season for him. This man has had an unbelievable career. He's been the man of the classics over the last 10 or 15 years. A World Championships under his belt as well. And what a way to go out if he could win the Tour of Flanders or Paris-Roubaix one more time. Now then, again, the whole field coming back together with 14 kilometers to go. Just 2 climbs left on this day. The Leiberg, where we are right now. And that would be very smartly followed by the Berendries, a climb well known to all of these riders. Tough cobbled section here. The acceleration always comes on when you hit the cobblestones because the Belgian riders are absolute experts over this kind of terrain, and a group of 2 riders just getting a small lead off the front of the main field, but the hammer is absolutely down. That looks like Stefano Zanini. Another group going forward here. 3, 6, 8, 9 riders riding at the front now of the 3 days of Le Panne on the way into Zottegem. In fact, we had been told that André Schmiel was in this group, and there he is, just swinging off to the right-hand side there in the red and black jersey. Houtman is in here, Zanini, and watch out for Laszlo Bodrogi as well, the Italian rider who led Paris-Nice early on. Now then, Berendries, the attack's coming. Peter van Petegem on the right-hand side. He knows this climb. He comes up it nearly every day when he's out training, not too far away from here in Brakel. One man following him, Stefano Zanini. Look at that face on Zanini there. It really is tough. Van Petegem knows these climbs. He's already won over this climb this year, and the first race of the year in Belgium, Het Volk. A big change for him. Rode for the American Mercury team last year. Put on the sidelines when the team absolutely exploded at the end of the season. He switched across to Koolstrop and now riding for the Lotto squad. The 2 men now have an advantage of around about 50 meters, and Zanini's cracked. Zanini is being left behind by Peter van Petegem, the favorite of the Flemish crowd here, but he's recovering. This guy, Zanini, he's a tough man. He's won stages at the Giro d'Italia. He's placed in Paris-Roubaix in the past, and he really does enjoy coming up here to Belgium to race. The 2 leaders inside 1 kilometer to go right now. Zanini in 1st position. 2nd position for Peter van Petegem. They have 15 seconds lead over a group containing 6 riders. And very shortly they're going to come inside of the last 500 meters. Zanini is in 2nd position, starting to sprint on the left-hand side, opening the gap. It's neck and neck for these 2 riders right now. Van Petegem on the left-hand side now. He's trying to kick. He wants to win here in front of the Belgian home crowd. Coming across the road into the middle, it's Zanini. Zanini gets the 1st stage of the 3 days of Le Panne, and he will get the jersey as well. Now coming up to the line, this looks like Houtman. This is Schmiel on the left-hand side. Schmiel is going to get it for 3rd. No, he's not. Ooh, that was pretty close. We'll have to have a look at the photo for that. In fact, I thought Schmiel was going to get 3rd, but there's no doubt about the win of the 1st stage of the 3 days of Le Panne. It goes to the man in the multicolored Mappe jersey there, the man who loves Belgium, Stefano Zanini, stage win number 1, and the white jersey of leadership as well. Here's confirmation. The first 2 riders with a 15-second advantage over André Houtman. And a little bit further back, André Schmiel was credited with 4th place. At the start of the 2nd stage, let's have a look at the overall standings. Stefano Zanini leads Peter van Petegem by 4 seconds. André Houtman is in 3rd place, 21 seconds behind. And the ambassador of Belgian cycling, André Schmiel, is in 4th, 25 seconds back. The second stage is the longest stage of the 3 days of La Panne, 232 kilometers, leaving Zottegem, heading up to De Panne. But the important part for all of these riders is the big concentration of climbs around Yper and Paterberg. The Monteberg, followed by the Kemmelberg, then the Rodeberg and the Zwarteberg. That is where the decision is very often made, and it's an area that the man from the coast, Johan Museeuw, knows very, very well. Quick glimpse there of Roger Hammond at the start, Bradley Wiggins, the British-Australian rider, as we turn into the Kemmelberg for the first time. And on the front, the Flemish Lion himself. This man loves this part of Belgium. He trains not too far away from here. He's followed there by Stefan Weserman in second position. Just a little bit further back, another good telecom rider in the pink and black jersey. That's Andreas Clear. And amazingly enough, the riders able to ride on the dirt track at the side of the cobblestones at the moment. When they come back here in a couple of weeks' time for Gent-Wevelgem, this will be all barriered off and they will be forced to ride on the cobblestones. Now, setting the tempo on the front here, Stefan Weserman, a man for the classics. There's the leader in the white jersey, Stefano Zanini. There's Gabriele Colombo, former winner of Milan-San Remo. The green jersey there was Van Petegem himself, very close to the front. This climb for the moment has not had too much of an impact on the group. They're all going up this climb together. But as we ride ourselves off the summit of the Kemmelberg, a small group of riders has gone clear. I make it 21 riders in that leading group with 24 kilometers to go. And all the big names are in here. They have an advantage of around about 1 minute over the main field. And here comes an attack. That's the style of Andrea Taffy. The green jersey, as the leader of the points competition there, is Peter Van Petegem. And nobody's responded. Now, coming out of the group, it looks like Hincapie there. Hincapie looking very attentive, trying to get himself into a small group across to the lone leader there, Andrea Taffy. And Petegem is just doing one thing at the moment. He's keeping his eye very closely on the man on his shoulder there. That white jersey is Stefano Zanini. That's around 40 or 50 meters advantage there for Andrea Taffy. You can just see the small group there containing Georgi Hincapie and the rest of the group not too far behind. Another rider coming across here to Taffy. That will make it 2 riders at the front of affairs. Taffy had a very good start to the season this year. This is Balducci coming across here right now. Taffy started his season this year in the Tour Down Under, then went to ride the Tour de Langkawi, and now trying to fine-tune his preparation for the one-day classics, Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix in 10 days' time here at the 3 days of La Panne. There are the 2 lone leaders. Their advantage not very much over a small group of around about 15-16 riders. The ever-present Peter Van Petegem, the leader on points in this bike race at the moment, shadowed there by the man who leads the race in the white jersey, Stefano Zanini. We're not too far away now from Coxeed and the finish after 232 kilometers of racing. As we go a little bit further back down the road, the main field is actually hammering along right now. They're a minute behind the 2 leaders, but only about 40 seconds behind the group in the middle, which contains the major contenders. In this leading group is Johan Museeuw. There is the group with Peter Van Petegem and Zanini. And a little bit further back, in fact, the junction about to be made right now. So we're looking at a situation on the road where we have 2 leaders right at the front of the race, Taffy and Balducci, and the whole of the main field just 28 seconds behind them. This is a huge main field here right now, and I'm sure we'll see them picking up the tempo as we get closer to town. 7 kilometers to go to the finishing line. That's around about 9 minutes of racing at speeds like this. You keep noticing the white jersey at the front, Zanini very present. In fact, the 2 leaders are about to be pulled back into the fold, but one man insisting off the front there. It looks as if that is the colour of Balducci, who is coming back to the main field. So that will mean that Andrea Taffy has decided to try and insist and carry on alone. There's Balducci, so it is Taffy at the front of the race. It's Domo Farm Frites on the front right now. That looks like Cervez Carnarvon trying to keep the pace high. Andrea Taffy, former Italian national champion, Kop van der Wegstrijd. That means the front of the bike race, and there's only one name in it right now, Andrea Taffy, the Italian former winner of Paris-Roubaix, but I think it's all over for him as well. He went out with about 40 kilometers to go, and almost inside of 6 kilometers, he's going to get caught by the main field. He knows it's all over. Now he has to change his role now and try and see if he can get his man Stefano Zanini up to the front for the possibility of a win. There are time bonuses on all the individual stages of the 3 days of La Panne, and that is what Stefano Zanini and Peter van Petegem must pay very close attention to, because at the start of the day they were only separated by 4 seconds. Well, Tom Steele's coming through on the outside there. He was led out by Stefano Zanini. It's going to be a win for Mappé again, and the lunge for the line. In fact, Steels hasn't got it. Steels, in fact, I think went across the line in second place. The man just lunging through the middle there with the red helmet is Salius Ruskis from Lithuania. He gets the win there as we look at the photo finish, easily by half a wheel ahead of Tom Steels, and I think Nico Eekhout just edges in for third place. Second stage here, the win going to Salius Ruskis of Lithuania ahead of Tom Steels of Belgium, and Nico Eekhout there in third place as well, but also a good position for Alessandro Patacchi in fourth. The final day of the 3 days of La Panne is a circuit race finishing and starting in De Panne, 118 kilometers. But one thing that happened yesterday, in fact, was there was a very dramatic crash on the descent of the Koppenberg, and the man who is out and probably out for the Tour of Flanders is André Schmiel, the man who is expecting to go out into the one-day classics in fine form for the last time. Well, that's not likely to be the case this year. This is the 118 kilometer stage 3 from De Panne up to Middelkerk, then back into Dixmude, into De Panne for a short circuit of 9 kilometers, and then the end of stage 3A before the riders will then prepare themselves for the very decisive individual time trial. Let's refresh our memories of the overall standing. Stefano Zanini now leads Peter van Petegem by 5 seconds, ahead of Andrea Houtman by 24 seconds. And watch out for the very good time trialist there, Laszlo Bodrogi of Mappé in fourth place. He's only 28 seconds off the leaderboard. Out on the course, 105 kilometers the loop, bringing the riders into De Panne. They're now going past the Dixmude Tower, which is a memorial to World War I. And this is the point where the Belgians finally managed to hold back the Germans, just on the far side there of the River Eis. The race situation at the moment is there are 2 riders off the front of the main peloton. They lead by a minute and a half. It's Van der Koe from the Bank Giro Loteria, and he's joined by a French rider, Franck Pencoli of the Française des Jeux. A lot of riders on the front of this group trying to keep the tempo up and pull everything back together before they come into De Panne, where they will face a 9-kilometer loop of the town, and then it's a big charge down to the finishing line. That's Ludo Dirksen's on the right-hand side there. His teammate coming through there as well, Jos Verstrepen. The Italian tricolor there, the very famous Daniele Nardello, doing a lot of work for Team Mappé today. All of these teams sending riders further forward now to try and keep the pace high. That's Andrea Taffy as well. Today working as a workhorse to try and make sure that when we come to the sprint finish at the end, the man in the white jersey there, Stefano Zanini, can get himself some time bonus advantage over the man in second place in the overall standings. Peter van Petegem is the man in second place, and he will be looking to put in a very strong individual time trial. But now with 46 kilometers to go, the leaders, their advantage has gone inside of 1 minute, 49 seconds to be exact, and you can tell by the temper in the main field that very certainly these 2 men will shortly be brought back into the fold. This now, looking down on the main field, is a charging peloton, or what remains of the 3 days of La Panne, as we are not too far away from the finish line now, and the 2 men are raising the white flags. And as soon as they see the neutral service car going forward like this, they know that the race and their attack is almost over. It's bad for the morale when you see that. You've been at the front of the bike race, and for Pencoli there looking back, he can see the charging main field, which is being led, strangely enough, by a lot of blue jerseys at the moment, the jerseys of the US Postal Service, and that is the team of Georgi Hincapie. Hincapie, I think, today looking for a chance to try and get himself a stage win before he goes into the Tour of Flanders, because he this year is hoping to try and win that race, and it is very strongly rumoured that Lance Armstrong is going to make the journey up to Belgium here to try and help George Hincapie win his first major one-day classic. He did win Gent-Wevelgem last year, but if he could win the Tour of Flanders or Paris-Roubaix, he would go in amongst the greatest American one-day classic riders. Now then, inside of 1 kilometre now, this is what it looks like at the back of the main field, but for Team Mappé, they're doing everything they can. This is Robbie Hunter on the front. Second place there is Andrea Taffy. The white jersey there is Stefano Zanini. Not too far behind him there, though, is Peter van Petegem. The green jersey now there is on the shoulders of Tom Steels. Steels is also trying to make sure that van Petegem doesn't get onto the wheel of Stefano Zanini. Now the big acceleration on the front. The jerseys are changing. They're white jerseys now. It's no longer Mappé. In fact, it's Faso Bortolo. This is Baldato trying to lead out his teammate Pataki coming up to the line. This is Baldato coming again on the outside. There's another move there by Ruskis, but in fact Baldato seemed to be trying to lead the sprint out for a teammate, but nobody came by him. So that is a win for Fabio Baldato, making the continuation of a brilliant season so far for Faso Bortolo. And in fact, coming up to the line, it wasn't Pataki in second place, it was Marco Zanotti. So it's a 1-2 for Faso Bortolo. Third place there just going to Ruskis, who won the stage yesterday. And in about fifth or sixth place was Giorgi Hincapie. So not a win for him today, a win for Italy and Fabio Baldato. Second place again in Italian, Marco Zanotti. Salius Ruskis is third, and George Hincapie there given fourth place. Stage 3B, the final stage, the decisive stage, and very early on, in fact before very much of our television cameras came live, Dylan Casey went out starting number 13 on the day, and when he came up to the line, it was an absolutely stupendous time for this 14 kilometers individual time trial, 17 minutes and 29 seconds, and that was going to be the mark that everyone would aim for. 14th in the overall standings, Tom Boonen of the US Postal Service, 21 years of age. Here is a man who they hope will become the next Belgian star. But for Giorgi Hincapie, going into the one-day classics, he can turn in a very good individual time trial and the chance for him to move high in the overall standings. Out on the course, you can see the speed of these riders. We're touching speeds in the individual time trial of around about 50 kilometers an hour. That there was the style of Tom Boonen as the windmills show and indicate that the wind is coming in off the North Sea at the moment. Look at this. This is a study of style here as we look at the pedaling action of George Hincapie. Absolutely perfect. The feet are flat at the bottom of the arc there as he keeps this huge gear ticking over. A brilliant aerodynamic position for Hincapie. Boonen comes up to the line. The time to beat is that of his teammate Dylan Casey, 17:28. He's not going to do that, but he will put in a fine performance. Now this man could be a possible winner of the individual time trial here, Nico Eickhout. He's a great time trialist. We saw that earlier in the year in the Étoile de Bessèges, and he will now go out to face this 14-kilometer individual test. Hincapie, the times posted out on the course have been very good. He has to beat his teammate Dylan Casey, and he's going to go well inside of that. Time to beat is 17:28, and Hincapie's going to do that marvelously. 17 minutes and 17 seconds for George Hincapie. He is now at the top of the leaderboard. Just two men left to finish. Two men left to start, I should say. Peter van Petegem rolling off the grid there. Only one man will start behind him, the overall leader of the bike race, Stefano Zanini. But for van Petegem, he's ridden this race before. He knows what the 3 days of La Panne is all about. As an amateur, he was the national champion of Belgium on the road. He was also the national time trial champion as well. And today, he's pushed by the possibility of winning the 3 days of La Panne too. His teammate, Nico Eickhout, is out on the course. He started the day in 7th place in the overall standings, and a good ride in this individual time trial will put him to the top and possibly a podium position at the end of the day. Stefano Zanini in the white jersey. He's led this race since the very first day in Zottegem. He now needs to put in the time trial performance of his life, but he's up against a very motivated Peter van Petegem, and looking at the face on Zanini here, it is not a face of absolute confidence. He knows he's not a great time trialist. Peter van Petegem, he's got the aerodynamic helmet on there, trying to make sure he can cut through the wind as easily as possible. A very strong pedaling action. Coming up to the line there, Eickhout is trying to beat the time of Giorgi Hincapie, which is the leader's mark at the moment. He's not going to do that, so still the USA at the top of the leaderboard with Hincapie. Out on the Corso, it looks as if this man might just beat Hincapie though. Peter van Petegem, he's not far away, maybe 150 meters from the finish line. Oh, those cones are very dangerous for these riders. He's gone outside and wide, and he's going to charge to the line right now. Hincapie's is the time to beat, but the new best time is Peter van Petegem, 16 minutes and 58 seconds. seconds. Now then, now it is all over. It is all over for Stefano Zanini. They were separated by 5 seconds at the start of the day. His time has ticked by. Peter van Petegem is going to be the winner of the stage. The white jersey on the shoulder there the man from Italy, Stefano Zanini, will be taken away and put onto the shoulders of Peter van Petegem at the end of the day as we get confirmation of the stage result. Van Petegem beating Hincapie there by 19 seconds. Hincapie pushed down into second place, but after 3 days of racing at the Driesdag van de Panne, Van Petegem is the winner by 33 seconds, and George Hincapie with that ride there, moving himself up into third place in the overall standings. This is the finishing charge of Peter van Petegem, and it bodes well for the upcoming Tour of Flanders. This man will certainly now take the ticket of the super favourite for Sunday's big challenge. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our coverage of the 3 days of Le Panne, which has lived up to its role as a curtain raiser to the upcoming one-day international cycle classics. I'm Paul Sherwin, until the next time, saying goodbye.